We are back with episode 4 of season 5, and before we jump in, I just want to highlight that we've partnered with our good friends over at Schiller to co-present this season. I've been advising Schiller for the last year as they help consult and market some of the most vibrationally aligned companies in the space. They're releasing their new season of Curated alongside this season of We Do a Little, so be on the lookout for new episodes from them, including some of our favorite people such as Brian Brinkman, Sasha Stiles, Chris F., and more. Links to their podcast are in the description of this episode. We'll also be doing a little event together during Art Basel Miami. Stay tuned for more details on that. If you'd like to sponsor season 5 of We Do a Little, please reach out to info@schiller.xyz. That is info@shillr.xyz. If you listen to this pod on X or YouTube, you'll notice this episode doesn't have any video. Due to an unfortunate hard drive failure, we lost the video feeds for this episode. Luckily, the audio is still intact and we can share it. Without further ado, let's dive in. In the 4th episode of season 5, we are joined by Aniko Berman and OX Brian. Aniko is doing incredible work focused on-chain digital art patronage, curation, and strategy at AOTM, which is Art of This Millenium, a premier contemporary digital art gallery. Brian is a Chad who's focused on the intersection of DeFi and NFTs. They're both known for their exquisite taste in digital art patronage. We dive into Brian's experience being a student under Redbeard, Aniko's background in art and how she got into patronage from her family experiences, the different journeys artists have to be successful, lending in the art market, and so much more. As always, this podcast is for entertainment purposes only and should not be relied upon for investment decisions. Redbeard D's and guests may be invested in companies or tokens talked about on this podcast.
Welcome to Shipwreck, episode 3 of 2024. Man, feels like 2014 though.
It's been a long 10 years.
Well, 2014 was actually a great year in crypto.
So we're going to run it back in 2024.
No, 2015 was really...
We're here with two wonderful guests.
2015 was pretty bad though.
Continuing our
2014
trend.
was actually not terrible. I mean, it's
Benny, this is the worst intro. We're going to scrap this.
No, we're gonna
This has just been scrapped.
Leave it.
And
Do
cut.
not scratch this intro. We are here with Aniko and Brian, two amazing people in the crypto space. We will start with ladies first. Aniko, I've known you for a couple of years now, and you have been a tremendous patron. And one of the themes that I think we're doing this season is about collectors, but really more patrons in the space. And I think that there's a lot to say about what you have done with so many artists, and we'll get into that. And really also in the trad art space, which I know is a weird word for people to hear when we say it, but you have been your whole life actually really in depth in art. And Brian, who claimed to fame is being my former student, and second, being one of the best collectors and patrons in the space. And another person, Dees, who is not just, in my opinion, not just became a collector, but became a patron from what they're doing. So I think that's our common theme about this. But I guess
we're big on patrons this season. We've been
patrons.
much more
Patrons,
focused on talking to people who we think are really here for the art, people who rain or shine if price goes to zero or whatnot. It's like you're normally here for the art, the artist, you know. It's not the...
You're here for the right reasons and
yes.
the reasons that make a difference.
We're trying to highlight that because we feel like right now it is a not frothy time for more of the degenerate shit, but it feels like maybe right now some art's being overlooked as people are chasing other more
meme coins and
liquid,
things that are liquid
opportunities.
So I think that this is like our focus, but we should start with the most important question that people have. Brian, what did you feel as an educator and administrator like when you were in high school and you were 12th grade, I think my first or second year, right? So
yeah.
Did you respect me then as much as you respect me now?
Probably respected you then more than I respect you now.
How was the transition going from being Benny's student to being Benny's friend?
So I mean,
wasn't that hard, I guess.
The class was it was a STEM class. It wasn't like super serious like tests and all and homework and all that stuff. We were just like using breadboards and Arduino and whatnot. So it wasn't like a class you're gonna hate your teacher. It was just like pretty chill class, especially relative to like all the other classes. And then we actually very like coincidentally found out that we were both in the same space. Like
I think I heard you in Spaces.
Yeah, I think I was on a Rug Radio space.
Yeah.
And then I got a text from Benny. I mean, like I knew that he was into NFTs, just like
You didn't know he was Redbeard.
No, I didn't know he was Redbeard. I knew like he was into apes and whatnot, and art, but I didn't like know. And then he texted me one day. He's like, "Yo, are you on this Rug Radio Twitter space right now?" I'm like,
"Is this you?"
I'm like, "Yeah, that's me." He's like, "Oh shit!" And then like he told me his Twitter, and then we started talking a lot more about just the whole space.
Yeah, I like heard his voice, and I'm like, Brian, like that's Brian. I know who that is. And then, but I've known Brian forever, and his father's.
Did you ever talk about art in school with them? Like, were you?
No, I wasn't. That was a long time ago. I think that was like almost 10 years ago, right?
Yeah. It was.
Are you on your 10-year anniversary?
No, not yet. I graduated in 2016.
Right? Yeah. So this is like 9. It's like 9 years ago. Right.
So it was before you were really in the thick of.
I was in crypto. Yeah. I think everybody in the community already knew I was in crypto. Everybody
knew into Bitcoin and everything.
Yeah, everybody said
Benny's going around school like, I own Bitcoin. Like,
no, I know. I've been telling people for like 12 years, 13, I don't know, almost 14 years in our community to buy crypto. I think that I've been very vocal about that. So, Brian's father, who's a friend also, I think I've been telling him forever also. Like everybody. I'm just like,
So the first thing he told you.
Yeah, exactly.
Bitcoin.
No, I always get the calls like when it goes up, like, oh, time to sell. I'm like, no, it's time to buy. But I don't think like it was the art stuff back then, because really, 9 years ago
there wasn't really that much going on in the NFT art world.
Yeah, and then once I was like, oh my god, Brian's like a crazy collector. That was great. It was just a nice little moment.
Yeah, it was. I don't know if this is too much doxing for the pod, so maybe I'll cut it after. But your daughter's middle name is Satoshi, right?
Yes, that's not doxing.
Really?
Okay.
Yeah.
No way.
Wow.
Yeah. So
That's
he was
wild.
like,
I never knew that.
You know that?
You never shared that.
No, Karu Satoshi.
Wow.
Yeah. So what happened was
Leaning in.
Brian,
You have a
Brian-
fourth child. Is the middle
I
name
did
going to
not
be
have a fourth
Vitalik?
child. What happened was my wife made a deal that if we had a third kid and it was a boy, I'd be able to name my son. And on our second one, we found out it was a girl. I was like, great, at least I'll name the third one. And she's like, oh, what name do you want it? This is like right as she gave birth. We hadn't named the baby.
What name do you want?
Sorry, it's like a week before she gave birth to our second girl. And she said, what name are you going to name the boy? I said, I have two names. I said, you want to name it Maverick after
Okay.
Top Gun?
She's probably ready to kill you.
Yeah, or my second name, which I thought was the one I really wanted, was James Tiberius, because Kirk's name is James Tiberius Kirk.
Okay.
And she informed me that neither of those things are going to happen. So I made the decision that since she was in bed after the baby was born, that I would fill out the paperwork for the name. No. So I was like, I'm going to take this moment. So I named her Satoshi. Yeah.
Wow.
And what was the response to that?
Well, in synagogue.
Wait, how
on
do you spell-
Saturday.
What's the Hebrew version of Satoshi?
Zatoshi. And then in synagogue, Brian, I think, was there. I think it was the rabbi got up in front of everybody because I had a baby. I had after praying, you celebrate, you have like food for the baby in honor of the baby. So the rabbi's like, I don't know how to say this, but congratulations to Benny on having a daughter, Karu Satoshi. And the whole synagogue was like, what? They laughed. It was great.
They know you.
Yeah.
That's your
I think Brian
I mean,
can explain that relationship, but I think the community knows me a lot and understands that
I can't believe I didn't know
strange and
Pretty
different, but I think that
on brand for you.
Yeah, I think that we all get along very well because of that.
What was Amira's reaction like?
She wasn't happy.
No.
Everybody came up to her. She's like, it's not name, it's this name. I'm like, okay, whatever. But officially, it's Karu Satoshi. But no, I think that I have a really good relationship with the community. I think the community knows I'm strange and different, but I think that they enjoy that because
You're not afraid to be yourself. That's why we love you.
No, Brian can tell you. I'm very much myself everywhere.
100% everywhere. Does not hold back.
No, do not.
Okay, so how did you meet Aniko?
So I think I met you just on random events, and
I was saying I met you through Corey.
Corey
Van Loo, yeah.
Oh, Corey.
Exactly.
I was working with Corey.
So you were working with Corey.
Yeah.
So Annika has been working with some amazing artists in our space. I don't want to get them wrong, but Corey.
Yes, I worked. Well, Corey was the first artist I really started working with.
Yeah.
So we worked together for about a year, and we're still really close friends, and I help and support from far away. And he made me my bespoke PFP, which is really pretty.
Yeah, that's right. That's what you have.
Never
Still
getting,
using
blue one, yeah.
never getting rid of that. It's beautiful. And then now I work with like Andre O'Shea, Clara Volstadt, very, very closely with both of them. And then I have, a number of other artists that I'm sort of like, always kind of supporting or trying to help.
Anika's been like behind the scenes, one of those people that we talked about that really helps artists, get on the right path and drive them and give them direction and give amazing advice. So she's being a little humble here because she also just got hired by VVD to work at AOTM, and that was based on, I could tell you that, and I've spoken to Vince, her art IQ, in my opinion, is off the charts. And her threads on art is something that everybody should be paying attention. I've tweeted this before.
Appreciate
because you have an understanding of a lot of stuff that we keep talking about. Brian, you and I talk a lot about as well, that we can't enjoy what we're doing without understanding the past.
Yeah.
Right? And how connected that is. And I know that's something super important to you. And the conversations I had with you and in your tweets, it's very obvious to you about that.
Yeah, I think, my background's in the traditional art world. So like I studied art history and I, worked at traditional galleries. I have an art history master's degree as well. And, the traditional art world, I think there are lots of things that we can bring from it, right? But I also think ultimately it's kind of a mausoleum, right? The system is a little broken and a little boring. So I left that, and it was really great to discover, crypto and Web3 and kind of this new art world, which I think we're all working on as patrons, right? Building this new space. And I think it's amazing because it's like a disruption from the past, but it's a continuation, right? Like all art history is always a relationship with the past and the future. And I think that it's important for us here. These are all new things, a lot of new dynamics, a lot of new aesthetics and new entrants. But I think it's important to contextualize it, right?
Yeah.
And I think that lends it credibility.
And I think you and I had this conversation in front of that super building that it gives an opportunity for artists that wouldn't have had it before. But also, I feel like Brian and I would agree on this, that it gives people like us an opportunities as well to be collectors of art that I don't think we ever would have had.
Absolutely.
If we didn't have this sort of Web3,
Absolutely. I think there's a price point aspect, right? Of course, the prices are so dynamic in this space. Like you have $1 million things and things on Tezos for $6 and they're both really cool. Like that's wild. Like that's insane.
Yeah.
But I also think that the problem with the traditional art world, it's like unless you have like an MFA in painting from Yale, like no one really cares about you as an artist, which is kind of fucked up, right? Yeah. But also as collectors, right? Like you guys would not even a couple of years ago probably felt comfortable going to Chelsea and walking into Gagosian and being like, can I see how much is this, right?
Never.
And it's extremely limiting, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's so beautiful that like people can come in and learn and participate.
100%.
It's like really cool.
It's different.
Did you grow up in a family of art collectors? Because we were talking about
I did.
Growing up in this Victorian house with fireplaces and stuff earlier before we went live.
So,
like, how did you fall
By
in
the
love
way,
with art?
just quick to let you know, these yesterday became Jewish.
Congratulations, Mazel.
You're sitting with 3 tunnel builders here. We all built tunnels to get
I'm
here
an honorary
today.
tunnel
You're
builder.
honorary tunnel builders. So I just want to throw that out there.
Besides the fact that we're all Jewish and love art.
Yes, yeah.
How did you come into like loving art and collecting it yourself?
Yeah, so I was fortunate enough to grow up in a very sort of cultural sphere. My mom was an artist. First she was a pop star in Austria.
Oh,
Wait,
shit.
for real?
Yes.
I didn't know this.
She had this like deep cut album that like people will still contact me to like to
Stop. Hold on.
Benny.
We gotta look this
Keep
up.
going. Don't hold on. Keep going.
What's the name?
her stage name was Isabel, Isabell, and Abell.
Yeah.
And the last name was Domin, Domin. And she had this like record.
Like that?
Domin, yep. She had this like contract with, I think like CBS. Yeah, that was my mom.
Okay, keep going.
Okay. And so first she did that, and then she moved to the US and married my dad. She's from Austria. And then she was this artist. I mean, she did these like crazy she did photography, performance. She actually collaborated with like Keith Haring here in like the 80s. And she was part of Fashion Moda Gallery. If someone looks that up.
This is her. This is your mom?
Yeah.
This is amazing. Do you understand this?
Yeah.
You speak?
I speak German, yeah.
Okay, sorry, okay. You're gonna have to put that video up, okay? Go on.
But yeah, no, she was kind of a badass. She was with Fashion Moda Gallery. You should look that up. It was like an early kind of street art gallery. She did really cool things. And then she was a painter as well. And anyway, I grew up around that. But my dad's an academic. He did German studies. And he actually majored in African American studies at Harvard.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did you ever show him like your traded stuff at all?
I haven't shown him yet, but I'm looking forward to doing that for sure. Yeah, Traded work is
very
amazing.
interesting cross blend.
Yeah.
So very academic.
When did your family come from? Sorry.
My dad's Jewish, but his family came from like Lithuania or something, or like the turn of the century. And
I'm saying, when did your parents come to the States?
He grew up in Newton, Massachusetts.
Oh, but your mom came.
My mom came in her like early 20s.
How'd they meet?
This is a really weird story, but it was this exchange program. So my dad did this exchange program as a teenager where it wasn't based on what country you wanted to go to. They based it on like your kind of profile and what kind of a family dynamic you would fit into.
Okay.
So he randomly got placed in Salzburg, Austria, because it was this like Jewish family who was in like the music recording industry. And my dad's family is like Newton, Massachusetts, like lawyer Jews, right? So like someone like figured that was a good fit. So that randomly
Doesn't
happened.
sound racist.
Just doing it by hand.
Yeah,
like,
sure by hand. Yeah.
Before we had AI and algorithms,
right,
it was like,
exactly.
oh, what's the vibe?
Yeah,
like,
this feels like a match.
yeah, it feels like they.
So, but he ended up in Salzburg, Austria, and that's where he met my mom, which is wild.
That's a crazy story.
Yeah.
And then she obviously followed him back.
And then she followed him to the U.S. Yes, and then. But yeah, I mean, he's been at Stanford for like 50 years. He does like, now he's like the chair of the Comp Lit department, and he's also part of the Hoover Institution.
So he's at Stanford now. Wow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But I grew up going to museums and like reading, and like, I'm very, very lucky. I had like access to culture all the time, and I had parents who we went to Europe every summer and went to museums and theater and music, and I recognize that that's extremely privileged, and like. I'm very, very grateful for that. But it was kind of like always in my DNA and always in my blood to like care and want to be around aesthetics. And
so did you know, like in high school before you even went to college, like I'm going to pursue the art route?
Yes,
nice.
absolutely.
And where did you work before all this?
My first job at a gallery actually was at Castelli Gallery, which is very cool. So I worked for Leo Castelli's widow, Barbara. She's but she's really, really smart and amazing.
We love the crazy people.
Yes.
We're all kind of crazy.
She's wonderful. I mean, we still.
Well, she did kill him, right?
She has a nice archive, nice collection. No, but like Jasper Johns still was there. Like met Jasper Johns, which was pretty cool.
Wow, that's actually very cool.
And then she has this crazy Rolodex, like an actual like paper Rolodex of like old cards. You can go through it, and it's like Princess Grace and like crazy shit.
See, like I feel like as crazy as that is, that's how I feel like what we're going through now. So like
I agree.
In 20 years from now, someone's gonna look at our Rolodex and they're gonna be like, wait, why do you have that person's
Absolutely. And it's all, we're gonna have also this amazing like social media history and like these tweets and these like, you're gonna have all of this like archive of things, places we've all gone, and people we've seen, things we've done. And it's gonna be really, really wild in 20 years.
Yeah, and we have all the provenance of what we're doing on chain. So
exactly.
It's like
so you can't even deny it.
No,
you can't.
No,
like,
but
it's
really special,
right? Can you imagine they had like provenance on chain when, I think about this a lot, but what the factory opened in like 63, I think, right? 62. Right. And, from 1962 to 1963, whatever, 1970, for 7 years, there's thousands of people and artists that walked in and out of the factory.
Right.
But you'll never hear their names ever again.
They didn't get a POAP.
Get a POAP. But can you imagine now, even an artist who's like, I came and then they left or it didn't work out, they're still part of this.
Absolutely.
This time period in Renaissance. And to me, that's really fascinating because you can't even deny the growth that it had here, but people don't get forgotten, I should say. So like I think it's kind of cool.
I agree. And I think that I think it's important to think about like what legacy we're creating, right? And like we should think, I actually have a book. I'm writing some essays. I'm trying to write. I want to write a book of essays about all of this and just like our experience of this. And like I just take notes of like interesting, weird little moments even that are like not the big thing at XYZ conference, but like these little interactions you have with people in the space because it's like this is like a history that we're making.
That's a big reason we like doing the pod too. Yeah. It's like this is gonna be available for hopefully ever or years on YouTube on all these podcast players. People can go back in 5, 10, 20 years and be like, oh, we talked to these patrons, we talked to these artists.
Yeah, like it's like great when you watch those videos.
Even the ones that are 2 years old are like cool to go back and like, oh wow, like we've come a long way.
Even like the first one we did, the ones we did in like Miami feel like forever ago.
The second one we ever did was with Benny in New York. It was like a trial run, and it's like Benny, you were little different. Like
I was a little different.
You've kind of like stepped into your role in the space now.
I was a little more quiet and
reserved, and we had to like pull things out of them. And now you just come in and.
Well, I felt comfortable with you guys, so there you go. Now I feel comfortable with everybody, I think. But what was I going to say before? You were saying that this is a time period where we're really building art and we're doing it together. You're working with a lot of artists. I guess when I ask both of you this question. I speak to a lot of artists, and I think there's a struggle now, right? We went through this time period of like, massive earnings.
Yes.
And it was inflated and it didn't make any sense. Yep. And we got to a point where it's like, okay, now we have all these artists, and I know especially some artists that you work with, and Brian, I know you have a lot of conversations with because Brian also puts together events and helps support artists. What do you think we do now, right? Like, how do we focus on someone like, some of the artists that you mentioned, those 3 artists who are fantastic artists, right? How do we protect them, to make sure that they survive and keep going without us having to rely back on what happened, 2-3 years ago?
Yeah, I mean, I think people got really lucky 2 or 3 years ago. In traditional art world, it's unusual, even as a successful artist, that you get to completely rely on your art to make a living. It takes a long time to get there. Even successful, recognized artists, I think people got really lucky, and I think it was a little bit of an unrealistic benchmark, So I tell my artists to think about, honestly, other revenue streams so they're not desperately making art to make a living, because then I think it's amazing to make art to make a living. I think it's wonderful when that's possible, but to have that be the kind of purpose of it, I think can mess with the intent, right? And then it becomes this weird, desperate thing, and then people create weird edition sizes. It's just the whole thing gets messed up, It messes up like the mechanisms and then also the aesthetic. So I tell my artists to think about what can they do that is creative, maybe client work, larger contracts. A lot of these artists did come from client work. Or just to think about ways to subsidize themselves that doesn't feel like total selling out.
Got it. So like find different ways to do it. Now, Brian, what would you say? I guess a lot of people have the question now of, do I have too much supply out? Right.
Well, first to add to that, I, without even having any background, in the traditional art, I would tell artists the same thing. You shouldn't, just coming from like the crypto standpoint, the crypto works in cycles, so there's going to be bull runs, bear cycles, whatnot. People shouldn't rely on anything that's going on in a bull run to last for an extended period of time, 5+ years, because it's not realistic. So I've also always tried to tell artists, don't fully rely on just making sales in this space. Try and diversify your income stream. That's like no matter what you're doing, everyone should try and diversify their income stream. The more you have, the better. So, especially for artists when you go through a whole crypto run and, it's very, very volatile. In terms of supply, I don't really think, if someone released an edition of 5,000 or whatever it is, let's just say they ended up doing an open edition and it ended up going crazy, I don't think anyone should be too stressed about it impacting, how much their one-on-ones are going to sell for. I think that, things can be totally removed from each other. Like an artist can have one collection of 100 that's, become, so known that it's worth way more than a collection of 50 that's not as known, So it's not always about edition size, and I wouldn't necessarily stress too much about it.
Also, I think maybe the paradigm might have switched a little bit. So it's like, the idea of less. Here's the other thing about less supply, right? I think for some artists it works. For some artists it doesn't matter.
Right.
I think people forget how the supply of Picasso is enormous, right? Because you only see the paintings that have value to them.
Right. But he churned it out. He was a business.
He was a business.
He knew what he was doing.
Right. So can you imagine someone like that had access to like just creating digital art that he could, digital posters that he could sell?
Right.
So I think that, look, everybody's different. Not everybody needs to be a Sam Spratt. And some people could be more of, a business oriented artist that, you want to make a living to be able to continue to make art the rest of your life.
Right.
And there's nothing, and I think that we get caught up in these things like supply and this and that. Like I make investments in artists that I think have small supplies and sometimes they have large supplies. But like you said, Brian, like I'll focus on trying to get some things maybe that are more unique in that person's things. But I don't know if, I think we're getting caught up too much in the minutia of all these things because we're still, as much as we don't want to say it, maybe too focused on price a little, right?
So, yeah. So, I mean, I would say also, this is something I've thought about, having the blockchain can have upsides and downsides. And I think personally a downside is that because everything is so open, like everyone sees every sale that, everyone's focused on the price because it's in your face, like it's there, as opposed to in the traditional world, like you might not know that a piece sold halfway across the world and like it just won't, the news won't get to you because it's not all open.
Yeah,
and
I
public.
mean, really the only public records you have are like at auction houses, and those tend to be secondary market, but like, the auction price may not even reflect the actual secondary market because so many things happen behind the scenes.
There's no like MoMA bot that's like
No.
the MoMA acquired this
No.
price. Like there's like we're following super rare bot, we're following foundation bot, and we're like, oh look at this sale. There's no
MoMA bot.
yeah, there's no Met bot.
There's no Sotheby's bot to be fair either.
Not yet.
But yeah,
it's a good idea.
I mean, actually, I don't think that open editions or large editions, I don't think it's really a problem. I think it just depends on the artist. But I think what I meant more is that if artists are relying solely on their art, then they tend to make decisions that maybe aren't strategic, right?
Right.
And I think that's a problem. And like, it's like you'll see an opportunity and you'll be like, fuck it, let's do that. And maybe it's not the best idea, but you're like, it's money,
You have to because you don't have another income stream. It's like, well,
exactly. And I think that, then that's not you're not in a position of power to think like strategically, That being said, it's also the space is crazy and changing all the time. So it's like you can think you're making a strategic decision based on some data set that's going to change tomorrow, And you just have to kind of roll with it.
If you had to compare Andre O'Shea to either, and hear me out for a second, to the Jolly Green Giant or the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. Now, I'm going to tell you why I feel there's two differences here, right? Man is gigantic.
He is.
Okay, he's like, I don't even think he's human. He's so big. He's so tall. And it's like, every time I see him, he is happy and smiling.
He's one of the kindest people I've ever met.
But is there a time when he gets upset like the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man and turns and gets angry? Have you ever seen that? Or is he just really that happy, that giant happy person all the time?
No, he can, he's human.
He's human?
He can get,
Okay.
but he gets.
Because I don't want to be in his way if he gets angry.
No.
I feel like he'll like break a tree over his leg or something.
No. He will retreat inward and sort
Okay.
of like step away. Yeah.
I love Andre. I think another purpose, like Andre releases art, like there's sometimes I'm like, I don't get it, but sometimes like, oh, I love his work, so I buy it.
Right.
And I buy it, and the truth is, I don't think about reselling it. I'm just like, oh, I have Andre's work. I could put it on my screen. I could get prints of it. Like, those are the things I think that we need to get back to in a lot of ways with the artists. So I do wonder, do you think that this next cycle, hopefully that we're in, hopefully, do you think that it'll be better this time?
I think it'll be different. At least, I mean, the artists that I'm working with, they're thinking a little differently. Like they have their fine art track, right? But they're also thinking about how can they create artwork maybe in a different context, right? So like, for example, Andre and Clara actually are both amazing with 3D
Clara's
animators,
amazing,
and Clara's like they're both extremely good at that. And you have the all of these AR VR things coming this year, right?
You made the Apple Vision Pro.
The
coming
Apple
out
Vision
shortly.
Pro, exactly. So those kinds of devices necessarily are going to be good for people who do 3D animation already, right?
Just gave me an idea of a great tweet.
Okay. You want to do it right now? Do you want to do it out loud?
Let me think about it first.
Okay. But so like we're thinking about, okay, what are opportunities where they can use those creative skills that they have to do projects that are still going to be creative, still going to be interesting and meaningful, but maybe aren't a one-of-one, right? And so we're thinking about that. So I think the next cycle is going to be different. I mean, Andre's also working, well, both of those artists are working with a sort of metaverse platform that's going to be doing some really cool things.
Nice.
Love it.
Like
Going back to client work, as somebody who doesn't have an art history degree, I've been self-teaching myself slowly over the last 2 years, 3 years here and there. But
You've been really teaching yourself a lot.
when I have looked at artists and I don't know them, and I see some of the client work they've done, like that gives me more confidence in what they're doing.
Yeah.
Like, I have a photographer friend. I love collecting his work, but like he's done a lot with North Face. And before I knew him, it was like going through his work. I'm like seeing he's done all this work for North Face. And I'm like, oh, that's like kind of high signal. Like that's major brand in the type of photography that he does. He's like summiting mountains and taking all these extreme condition shots. And like, I think the client work stuff gets maybe a bad rap. But as a collector who didn't have an art history degree, like I was looking for that. Like Martin Grasser, we were talking about him yesterday, and like the Twitter logo.
Yeah,
sure.
Like stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like all these alarms go off in my head as someone who doesn't have as much background, but that lends a lot of credibility to them.
I think it does. I think first of all, we talk about Sam a lot here, but before.
Well, Sam's a great example.
Sure.
I was on the phone literally with Joe Pease the other day, and I said to him, like, he was talking about releases this coming year, and he's talking about making a living and all those things. And he said, well, I have this other work that I do anyways, so I should be fine. And I was like, well, what's your other work? And he's like, oh, I worked with all these, like, he names all these, like, famous people. I was like, wait, why don't you post
He's
that?
never said that. Like,
Never says it. He's like, I don't know, mate. No one cares. I was like, no, everybody cares. Like, at least I care.
I also think like for an artist, when I'm thinking about working with an artist, if they have experience doing client work, it also means they like can be professional.
Yes.
And they can be accountable.
100%.
And they can get shit done.
Yes.
And they're gonna like. I'm like, you have to be on this call. You need to do X, Y, Z. I know that they're going to be able to do all that. And like, that's a really big signal because it's like, you need to be professional in this space. I know artists are allowed to be eccentric and strange, and that's amazing. But like really successful artists, like know what they're doing and they show up and they wake up in the morning,
Yeah, no, that's.
But also in terms of client work, Warhol was an illustrator and he did advertising. Edward Hopper too. Like there are a lot of famous artists who did client work first. And I think that's,
Dr. Seuss.
Dr. Seuss.
He was a political writer for a newspaper, right? Political cartoonist for a newspaper.
Or like Toulouse-Lautrec.
Also wasn't Toulouse-Lautrec, right?
Yeah.
Right. I mean, Toulouse-Lautrec was creating the posters, which I always find fascinating. Can you imagine like you pulled one of those posters down and you still had it?
Right.
It's like fucking crazy.
The Warhol, the boxes, not the soup cans, the boxes, they were just like created for an installation and they weren't really even sold. And now they're like, anyone who took one and actually like preserved it, it's like extremely valuable now.
Oh, they just like took them home with them?
Yeah, I think they were, or they were like super cheap. They were like a funny add-on to a show.
That.
They like weren't a thing.
It's like a Lost Robbie.
Or like a POAP now. Like, like you never know. Like someone might in the future be like, well, I want that,
Totally.
That's so interesting.
Yeah. The POAP stuff's weird to me. Like I have this, 100 of them at this point. And I'm like, is anybody going to like, I don't know. We'll find out.
I don't know. I think Patricio is super smart and he has some plans. I've always just like, I just take
I
him
don't collect
because
concert tickets.
The Lost Robbie is basically the first POAP.
Pretty much. It was.
Basically.
Well,
there might have been before, but to my knowledge,
But people just like, at the time they're like, oh, fuck this. I don't want it.
Well, I think sometimes like things you don't expect, right? Like, I don't want to make sure I get this right. Caused the plates at the LACMA, right?
I don't know exactly, but that sounds reasonable.
Right? Like he created them and it ended up being like one of his most important projects.
Right.
And I think it was like the LACMA was like, oh, can you just make 100 of these, whatever it was. I'm probably getting it wrong. Something along those lines. But I think sometimes like the things you don't expect the most, end up turning out to be like sometimes your biggest successes.
Right.
And so therefore you can't just
Sam Skulls.
yeah, 100%. Dude, 100%. He gave us out for free. I bought
He
the
spent
first
so
one.
much time just doing it as like an act of love for everyone who showed him
same
support.
Thing. Yeah. So like,
don't
I
think
think
he-
that there's 100%. And then when I bought that first one, I remember people like, oh, he gave us out for free. Why'd you buy it? You know, I was like, oh, I have, but, so let's go on. So now you're working, we'll stick with you, Aniko. Brian, you could chime in whenever you want, by the way. Yeah.
I wonder who Brian's working with too.
Yeah. So actually, let's get to that.
Brian's like a real G who just moves quietly.
Brian is just like, Brian is like under the radar, just like doing so much. And every time I talk to artists, they're like, oh, I just spoke to Brian. I feel like I hear that a lot. But I know that you work with a lot of artists. You just purchased like 100 screens or something to start showing stuff.
No,
yeah.
no, I did not. I mean, we low-key purchased 10 screens like a while ago before our first event.
10 or 100, same thing.
But no, I mean, before, a couple months ago, I worked at Genesis until, Genesis shut down at the beginning of September.
What were you doing at Genesis?
I was there for 2 years. I was working first on the lending desk. So front lines, everything.
Nice. Let's get some more
3AC,
stories.
Luna, UST, everything.
Good old days.
FTX, Alameda. And then after the lending desk shut down, started working on the trading desk there. And then in September, they just like kind of fully shut down.
Yeah.
So I'm still actively looking for something within the crypto space. Within
Well, this is coming out 2 months from now, so I'm hoping that you have found something by the time this is live.
Yes.
But-
Hopefully by the time this comes out, I will have found something and also executed on some of the ideas that I have. But I've been thinking about recently. This is very, very early stage idea, but I think that in this space there's a lot of focus on like external validity. Like from traditional institutions, Sotheby's, all these other things. And I'm really beginning to think that we kind of need to establish our own institutions. I think that's one thing AOTM is doing. I think there are people doing it. And I've been looking into how we can kind of start a crypto native like public museum. I think
That's a great idea.
something. I mean, 6529 crew is kind of doing something that's more. That's their money that they raise. It doesn't seem like it's really a museum officially, like how that's established. It's more like a fund.
I think when they're done with the
but
meme cards, it would be more.
Yeah, but I do think that like we will want to preserve as much as what we can within ourselves and not like necessarily have it in these all these other traditional museums, because like if hopefully if everything plays out how we think it's going to play out, it won't really matter that it's in like a traditional museum versus if someone else has it. So like I think it would be important for us to have our own public institution, crypto native institution, that maybe can build a crazy collection. That's a very early stage idea. Like I don't even know how museums even like fully work. I have to like look into everything.
Yeah, like and we
it's
have
like
a couple
very,
Museum of Crypto Art, Mocha.
Yeah,
Right.
I don't fully know
But
how
I think
that works.
yeah.
I don't fully, like you said, the 6529 museum. It's like I don't fully know how that works. It's
right.
like
Yeah.
I
you
think
can go
it's-
into a virtual world and see it.
I think it's, I don't know. I think of these, I think we have to do both, right? Like,
Yeah.
I think that I don't think that we should just be obsessed with how does the traditional world take us seriously. But I do think it's important to start to really work on those conversations, because I think there is real credibility, right? That you get from traditional institutions.
100%.
And I think that what you're talking about is like something we should also definitely be doing in tandem. And I think it should be somebody to think about who's the audience. Is it just us in our space, or is it the outside world?
Yeah.
And I think so I think you kind of have to, work on both, right?
100%.
Right, like
100%.
I feel like everybody, design. I talk about this a lot. Like everybody's always obsessed about getting into the MoMA, right? And how many times have we said like, not everybody has to get into the MoMA. Like you don't have to get into the MoMA.
Well,
like I understand the feeling of that, but the idea to get into the MoMA, first of all, is so. You're talking about like a small percentage of artists have done it, right? And,
Yeah.
like we were talking about this last time. I was talking to Brendan Dawes, who's in their collection, probably the first NFT artist who is in their collection before Rafik, to be honest with you. And I spoke to him about it, and he's like, look, It's not like a process one day. You're just like, oh yeah, I'm gonna get into the MoMA. It takes years, right?
Yeah.
And the other thing is that there's other institutions.
Yes.
And we have to like kind of be open to being like, it doesn't have to be the pie in the sky every time. I think you could be a successful artist and not have to be in the MoMA.
Yeah, I also think that there are lots of traditional institutions that aren't MoMA, that aren't Whitney, that aren't the top ones that are actually more open because they are a little more nimble, and they also are trying to think about how can they differentiate themselves. So like I think of like the Toledo Museum. I know you had that talk with Adam.
Yeah, I'm very close to Adam.
Yeah, and Adam's great, but it's like, if you can't, everyone who's just focusing on the super big brand names is going to miss the people who are doing really cool stuff at out of the way places.
And the funny thing is, if you look at the Toledo collection, and you went there, you're like, holy shit, they have fucking amazing
100%.
Like,
Midwest museums, and like or random places, Crystal Bridges. They are showing people the human one. I went to the unveiling of that, which was amazing. Crystal Bridges is an amazing institution, but you have this amazing people work across from this insane Mark Rothko in this room of like contemporary, like amazing works, right?
100%.
And it's like we have to think about, we have to be a little bit, we have to also be open. Like we're asking traditional art worlds to be open to us. We have to be open and not just go for these brand names.
And there's a lot of different institutions out there that we could partner with, even local. I just spoke to this young lady at the museum, the Moving Image here in New
Regina?
York.
Yeah, she's great.
Amazing.
She's amazing.
Amazing. She's like talking to me like, about how much.
Totally.
Hopefully, when I get back from my vacation, I'm gonna go there to meet with her.
Yeah.
But like, Museum Moving Image is not the MoMA, but it's a great museum.
Yes.
It's a great space. It's a great institution to show off. And I know that they're doing more of the stuff.
And of course they're being more open because they're all about new media, right? So like,
So going to your local sort of institutions, in my opinion, is just as important as getting to the MoMA, if not more important. And I think we need to have like more of a focus on like, you don't have to be, one of my favorite artists on Instagram is this lady who she like does, I think I sent you her stuff. She made these wigs. She puts boxes in the city to go find them. It's not like this huge artist. I don't think she ever cares about being in the MoMA, but she creates her art every time and she loves it. And she has fans and she has people that do it. And she's going to be able to say, sorry, I didn't say the artist's name, CJ Hendry. And she loves what she does. She loves it. And she makes great stuff. And sometimes you could be a successful artist and that's all you do and that's okay, right? And I get if you want to have drive to be more and you want to be this legendary artist that's going to be in the MoMA and have a Netflix series, that's great. But understand that work is going to take a hell of a lot of time and pain and agony, and it's going to be failures and successes that's going to take years. There's no way that that's going to happen very quickly.
No.
I think it all goes back to what you were saying about the expectations were formed in 2021 that were just like completely delusional. We made it seem like you could go from like zero to being worth millions of dollars to like being in a museum in like 3 years.
Yeah.
It's
just like that's like boom, boom, boom.
On the long scale of time, that's like a 30-year process for most people, or 20-year process.
I say it's like everybody keeps like, if you go to Beeple's studio and you look up and see the wall with everything, right? You really could tell.
It's a powerful moment when you're in front of that giant fucking wall.
It's a giant fucking wall. And what I always say to people is what I think what they miss out on is realizing that I see amazing art and it's great and everything, but I see it as it took him this long, right?
The first 20% are just like,
he's just, but that's how long,
right? But
and he did it, but it took him this long to be successful,
right?
This is 5,000 days of art. That's how long it took him to be successful. And instead, people are looking like, oh my god, which one do I like the best? I'm like, great, but also look at his career. That's his whole career. That how long it took him to get to this point.
Right.
And again, I understand that. Right place, right time. That happens a lot, especially in our space, like with him and XCopy and many others.
Right place, right time.
It
but
happens,
he put himself in the position to be in that place by doing all that work over 20 years.
Right.
So
it's tough. It's a lot of the artists are young. At least some. I feel like most people I collect from are like younger. They had that 2021 experience, and then they come to me and they're like, "What do I do?" Right. And I'm like, number one, I'm an idiot.
Why are you asking us?
You're asking the the guy who like almost dropped out of Ohio State, who like got an IT job he hated, who spent all his time playing video games, what to do. Like, I don't know if that's the best person to ask for advice.
I feel, I feel this way all the time also.
I think that what's cool, everyone comes to this space with completely different backgrounds, which I love. Like in the traditional art world, everyone's kind of the same. Everyone kind of did the same thing.
They went to the Ivy League thing.
I studied art
They have the
history,
parents
all
who
this
knew
stuff.
the
But in
thing.
this space, what I love is I'm always around people who all come from a completely, for the most part, different background. And then you realize how many strange experiences can become really valuable that you didn't think about. And I love that.
I agree. Like, I think we're bringing unique perspectives into this. And look, I think we're all, I say this all the time, we're all the misfits and where we don't belong sort of people. And we now have a place that we belong to. So I agree. But, it's funny you talk about, like, I look at DeFi Studio, right? And I obviously collect from him and I'm very open about that. But, he's 23 years old. Right, so
That's crazy.
Right?
When I talk to the face, I feel like he's like 32.
So I
feel like
think
he's
that's
like older
the
than
difference, right? And he
like
comes,
the way that he goes about his business
That's-
of like when he reached out to the Muppets
Yep.
puppet guy and made all these connections. I was like, wow, like I would be intimidated to do that as a 30-year-old. And he's like,
So I think that's the difference. Like when when artists ask me, what do I do next? DeFace will never say that question to me. He'll ask me like, oh, what do you think of this? Or do you think his mind is, I just started my career and I'm going to go. And he'll say things like, as an artist I am now, I don't know if I'll be the same artist in 10 years from now, but to be able for us to see that growth, I'll collect art from him now, even if it changes, because to me, that's the mindset you have to have. It's like, how do I keep going? How do I not stop? How do I change? How do I be different? And I think that if you're asking yourself, like, what do I do now? Then you ask your question is like, what am I doing with my art? Right? It's not like, what do I do now about selling? It's really like, what am I doing next to push that limit?
yeah. And as a collector, like I've only been collecting for 3 years now, so I haven't got to see those big changes really in an artist's career. But when you go look at, I don't know, someone like George Condo or Picasso, like how they changed over time.
Yeah.
Collecting from different time periods is like something I'm excited to do. It's like
Yeah.
I'm a young collector, so like Corey, the COVID era is done, but
Yeah.
Right.
we have a Corey 101 of the COVID zip up suit. And it's
Right.
like, I'm curious to see in 10 years what
But
he's
you
worth.
could even see Corey now. Like,
Well, that's what I mean. He's
like
already-
you could watching this transition with him, and I've been loving just listening. I tell him all the time, like I love.
I love how he
his
does the
feed
painting
because, yeah.
videos too.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
watching his process of like just layering the paint and like you really get to put a different value in it when you see the whole process. So it's like, holy shit, like he just made it look like, dark wood and brown, and then that's the base layer, and then the final layer doesn't have like any of that color in it.
Yeah.
What's
Yeah.
he doing? And like for me, it's like my gears are turning in my head of like, oh, there's like so much more to this when I'm along the ride for
100%.
the
Right.
process. And then seeing those processes change over time, like Summer Wagner, we've talked to her, you look at
100%.
her early work, she was doing more of like, family portrait commissions and then ended up editing them kind of spooky. And then the people that she would give the photos to would be like, can you like not edit them? And then she realized like that was her style, but then
Right.
watching it evolve as she learns, different techniques, how to mess around with long exposure more, how to introduce different lighting.
And now the way she thinks, like I was just like just talking to her, and she's like, I want to do this next, and
and
you know what
went
she
from
said to
that-
me? I was just like, wow, like it's that process of like
She like
what could I
interviewed
do
like
more?
36 actors
Yeah,
for her next
yeah,
day. Like
she's
she like up the whole bar.
She's
And it's
like,
like, okay, like you
she's
can
keep
see there.
pushing that limit,
And,
I
like that's what I want to see as a collector. Is
Yeah.
like
Right.
people like that who are
I think Clara, I've seen her do that 100%
Mm-hmm.
from the start of her career to where she is now.
Yeah.
Like talk about an artist who's like, okay, I liked what I started and now I'm changing, or definitely somebody who like, or Sam J, even another example,
Yeah.
like who I'm very close with, like also going from there and now starting a clothing company.
Right.
Like,
Right.
where do you
'cause
get that's
I
great.
worked with Sam last year, and we're still very, very close and friendly. But Sam's now gone into this whole like, fashion thing. They've realized like this is what they want to be doing. And I actually think to also go back to this idea of like what happens in the bear market for artists. I think that then you have to try. right?
Yes.
So you can't just make some shitty JPEG, not that any of those artists did, but like, you know, make some random JPEG and then sell it and just be like, okay, cool, I'm done, right? Now artists are thinking more about, well, it's not like that anymore. So what do I really want to do? Because I may sell work, I may not. So then I should just do what I want and use it as a time to experiment and try new things. And that's how you develop, you know? And I think that's really important. So in a strange way, it's a good, you know, I don't wish artists not being able to make money off their artwork, but it makes people all have to try. And I think all of us too, as people in this space who are working and trying to, you know, it's the last year was really tough, but I think probably all of us had to just kind of like level up a bit, because you have to like think, what do I really want to do next? How can I add value? How can I support myself? And it's been a good thing.
Yeah, and I mean, as a collector, that's exactly what you want to see. I mean, that's what I want to see. Like, there's nothing wrong with artists who who sell work, you know, to make a living, and like will sell work, you know, just to make the living. But what you really want to see is artists who are thinking bigger. Like, how can I, at the end of the day, like, how can I make my art outlast me?
Yeah,
and that's really, you know, that's what I'm looking for, and it's obviously not easy to find, and it's very possible that nothing that any of us have now is that.
Yes.
But you know, you that's what you're looking for. You know, you look for artists who are really thinking out of the box, trying to expand and work on themselves, work on their art, and you know, do what they can to make it last.
And those artists that a lot of that we already mentioned, like or Cowboy Killer, or you know, a lot of the artists you have mentioned, all of us, who are not, I would say, those artists even aren't like, let's say the top, right? I would say that they're, you know, in the sense of like you're comparing them to like the Beatles of the world, but they're really hardworking artists that sell, that are creating their process. And I love about those artists is that every single one of them that we mentioned, I cannot tell you how many times they make money and all they do is take their money and pour it back into the art.
And I have to caution them.
And it's hard because like you'd have to say like, wait, before you do that, make sure you're saving enough for this. But like, you know, I was on the phone with Cowboy Killer, and he's just like, I'm gonna take that profit, I'm gonna do this and do that. And I'm just, you know, you have to caution because you have to make sure you can survive. But that to me is a sign of a true artist, right? That's a sign of me, somebody who's like Brian just said, they're dedicated to their work and what they want to be in their success. And I think that separates a lot of times for me to collect from people versus others who you could tell sometimes they're just selling and they're taking trips and they're, you know, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that.
Right.
I like, that's fine. This is a free market. And by the way, I bought art from those people as well.
Right.
But the ones that I'll have conviction on are the ones that have conviction of themselves.
Right. I agree. Yeah. I mean, one thing I really liked, and people posted this recently, was talking about the everydays, and he's like, I use this opportunity to kind of always be learning new processes and always be like trying new things. And like, even though I'm this far in my career, I still don't even feel I'm anywhere close to being how good I want to be. I actually wish we could see, because in traditional world, we all kind of know how painting works a little bit. Right. And then, you know, you have Corey posting those videos, but I actually try with my artists, I like try to do this kind of studio visits, and I'm like, share your screen. Like, how do you make this? Cause I don't know how to use 3D animation software. I know a little bit more now cause I watch my artists do it, but like, I want to get a better sense of the process there, because I think that's really interesting. And we realize how hard a lot of these things
That's
are.
one of the most fun things at the Beeple events because he does the live every day, and you get to see him in Blender or 3D Pro, Octane, what I don't even know half the programs he uses, but you get to see like, oh, he's like working with this object and it's tweaking the output over there, and like, oh, that fucking slider really like changed it. When we were doing the Escher drops, every drop we did, I would beg the artist to do exactly what you said, like, come on a call with me for 30 to 60 minutes, share your screen, and show me, like, you know, if you're a photographer, show me what the Lightroom looks like.
Right,
like,
exactly.
We did it with Summers, and it blew my mind when she was turning the filters on. I was like, wait, that's the raw photo? Like, it was at nighttime? Like, you have it lit up like it's a daytime scene. Like these things that you just wouldn't get. Right. And as a collector, like, that's the type of stuff I need, because it's almost like a proof of work in a way. Mm-hmm. Like, I can see something now, and half the time I think it's AI. Like, I've made so much work with AI that I'm so skeptical on everything I see now. Right. And without that proof of work, proof of thought process, like, it's harder to have confidence, especially on the higher end stuff. Like you were talking earlier, one of the first things you said is you can buy like a $6 thing on Tezos,
Right.
or you can buy a 6-figure thing
Right.
somewhere else.
Right.
And it's like, as you go up that scale, you need more and more confidence as a collector to pull the trigger.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just ask more artists to do it, because I know sometimes it's hard. Like some artists are just introverted and they don't want to share that. Some artists think that maybe they're giving away the secret sauce.
And I think sometimes you want to have that, like, sort of, you know, like, oh, I don't know how it's done. Like, I get, like, Joe Pease is like, that's his thing, right? So it makes sense to me. But I also feel like, you know, there's sharing how you do it is really important. And Joe has
and he does
started
share,
the show.
I didn't know for the first year that like Joe is in some of his own pieces.
Yeah.
Right.
And like he is digging, he's wearing a suit. Like
I told him, I told you this last time, I wanted him to put me in the next piece, but I want to come up from the ground like I was coming through a tunnel.
Tunnels.
Tunnels.
We're back to tunnels.
Yeah, back to tunnels.
that's just that sigh meme where he's coming on stage like with the
100%.
hydraulic truck.
It's like pop out, go back down like a mole. But no, I agree. And like, I actually think that there's two things to say about AI art. Number one is, if you're using AI art in general, I have zero problem with it. Like, I actually think it's going to be something that your people are just going to be good at. You know, the way Claire uses it, and Curran and others. You know, I think that there's a lot of beauty to that. 100%. I think on the opposite end of the spectrum also, there's going to be many artists that are going to use AI in their art, but as a partner, right? So there's two ways to use it. You could create with it through like the way we do it, or you could use AI to enhance your art as an artist. And I think that we have to get kind of okay with that in the future, because I think that's going to be a large part of what's going to happen. And I think it's only going to make the space better.
Yeah. What do you think about AI art?
I mean, it's pretty much similar view. Like, I have nothing against it. I think that obviously if you're using it, you should be open about it. And I don't think it takes away from the art at all. I personally, I mean, people who are doing AI art, like if I were to collect AI art, I would want to know that, one, it's more than just like text prompt and like that's just it. Like if you are using AI and editing it and making it your own and doing it like in that way, I think that's amazing. Like I'm very open. I'd love to collect that type of art. But again, it comes down to like knowing the processes behind it. Like,
Right.
How are you doing this? If you're using AI, like if you are making it your own, like I think you should be telling people that, because, you know, and you should show videos and whatnot. Like, how are you using Photoshop to do this, or if it's 3D Blender to do this, and putting it all together. And it comes down to like, honestly, it reminds me of Thank UX blending physical and digital together. Like if you're blending two different, you know, if you're using AI and also Photoshop and all these other things, it's honestly, in my head, it's similar to mixing a physical and digital together. Like you're using two kind of separate tools and you're putting them together as one.
And I think
that's great.
And I think those tools are great. Like, you know, I'm also a big fan of Imani, right? Or even Clara, for instance. I'm sure at some point in the tools that they're using to create their images, right, there's going to be a time when they're going to use AI partly as that tool.
Yeah.
I don't think that takes away anything from their creativity, what's going on in their minds, of what makes me attracted to their art and their work. Right?
I agree. I think it's a collab. I think it can be a total collaborator. I also think some artists are using AI to like investigate what AI means, which is very interesting and actually very cool and like conceptually very smart. But I think, I just think I think what I do when I see a work and I want to understand whether it's, you know, if they mentioned AI, I look at their previous bodies of work and I try to understand, like, is this because this is part of a vision, or did they use AI to make a shortcut of a pretty scene? You know what I mean? And like, that's not interesting to me. But if it's like, they're using it to continue to push forward with something that clearly has been in their minds and that they've been working on, then it's like, that's just artistic development, you know?
And I don't even think we're there yet, because if AI was perfect, I would be able to have like a bot on my phone. So every time my mother-in-law texted me, the AI could just text back something really random.
You have it. It's called ChatGPT.
No, but I don't. No. understand. I don't even want to know. Like,
you don't want to know she texted
like, I
you.
want, like, I want it to be like 6 months later. She's like, yo, we've been having great conversations. I'm like, yeah, sure. I didn't even know it was happening.
Indeed.
Right. You're like, yeah, like, I'm great. You know, I'm so happy we're having these great conversations I don't know about.
Going back to making AI art too, I think it's made me a better collector. Like, I'm a lot more
100%,
discerning, and I kind of know more what I'm looking for or what I'm not looking for.
Sure.
Maybe more of what I'm not looking for because I've made it so much myself.
Right.
But it's definitely made me have a newfound appreciation for it because I've never been one to really set aside creative time to just like sit down and see what happens. Like, I'm very much I was always playing video games. I needed to do something that had a set payout. It's like, I knew if I played for an hour, play 2 games, I could win 2 games. Like, I had to do something. Like, there's times where I try to make something for 4 hours and I'm no further than when I started.
Right.
It's like, I didn't make anything I like. It all looks like shit. I'm not happy with it. And like, it gave me a newfound...
You become a real artist.
It gave me a newfound respect for
that's
the artistic process of like, you just can't force things.
Right.
And then it also gave me a newfound respect for like people who make a really good piece in a short amount of time. All the shit that they made that you didn't see that led to that piece.
Right.
Like, sometimes it may only take people 30 minutes or an hour to make a really good piece, but it's more about the idea behind it and also everything he did leading up to that piece rather than the piece itself. Like, some of the pieces I've put out that I thought weren't my best have got the strongest reactions. Something that might have only taken me 2 hours got a better response than something that took me 3 weeks. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I was an artist that clicked for me. It was much more like I was looking too much for the proof of work, too much for the monument game type stuff, and not really open to the idea that like, that's just a very good idea that was executed perfectly, and it doesn't matter that it didn't take a year to make it.
Right.
And I think it's okay to do also, Brian. You want to say
I think like on that point though, I do think though that, again, this is in my opinion, the negative stigma around AI art is because when people think like AI art, they just think someone wrote a sentence, something popped out, and like that was the final product. Like, that was it.
I gotta give him
like,
props to Shakai because I feel like he's done one of the best documentations of his AI art, where he started out just doing text, and then he started doing text to video, and then he's showing himself like in Premiere cutting it up. It's showing himself he does the music for it, like all the layers,
It's a lot.
and you wouldn't think
he's putting those films in like film. Like what's it called, the awards shows and stuff like that to try to see if they get nominated film festivals.
It's been crazy to see, and he's just been doing it for like a year, but really publicly,
Right.
Like, just like, I made this, and then it's a very thoughtful thread, like the ones you write of just like, this is the process, this is what's going on, and then he's very open about
like Kai is like super smart. You know that he like created Google.
Yeah,
you know he created Google Maps, right?
We had him on the pod.
Google Earth.
We had him on the pod. It's not aired because I was gonna dox on that pod.
Oh, that's that one.
It's our locked episode.
Okay. But yeah, he created Google Earth. Like,
Yeah.
That's crazy.
He's no joke.
But the whole process of like open, like you said, it's not just a text to an image.
Right.
That's it. It's like
It's
a bunch of text to images, then Runway connecting them together, and then edited in Premiere so that it is actually smooth and not, you know, sometimes Runway just gives you something that's not perfect and you have to edit it.
Right.
And then the music on top of it, and then the story.
Right.
Deez watches me create on AI now because he
Yeah,
set me
I
up
set
at the
up
room.
the bot. So
he
Benny didn't know that if you wanted to use Midjourney, you
Didn't know
could put
clue.
it in its own Discord server.
Yeah.
So Benny was just in the big public one. And then he was like, I can't find anything I've done. Like, it's all messed up. So now I have the privilege of anytime Benny prompts, my phone buzzes and tells me what he's doing.
They're interesting. I mean,
It's fun. I mean, you're definitely an artist. Like, you have
I'm trying. I don't think I'm an artist, but I'm trying.
But
But the point I was getting at is like, when AI, you know, this is all very new, and in general on the internet, 99.99% of AI images you're going to see are just like a text, and that's the image. So when people like, I think when you hear AI art, like your original thought is, oh, it's just like a text image, like that's it. And if you're doing a lot more with AI and with your art than that, then like that's amazing, and you should be telling everyone like your process, and there's nothing wrong with that. And like, it's just as intricate as someone who's actually doing a hand painting and takes, whatever. If it takes you 20 hours and takes someone else 20 hours, it's the same hard work, same time. And it shouldn't be like thought of any less than anything else.
The way you create art, if it's a paintbrush, stylist, code, I mean, AI is a lot of coding also, essentially. To me, that's all this, it's all a process, right? You're still creating your art. I do think there'll be levels. Like if I were a collector right now, I pretty much think 2022, around 2023, this last year was the last year I would consider that like the beginning of AI art. So like I would collect why I like Claire's work now, or Bado, or some of those other things, is because
Bado is crazy.
Or Curran is because, and there's so many others. I find their work to be like the first ones, so it's a little easier to discern, to understand that it's like the first chapter of AI art.
Right.
Then
Rio is working with AI like in 2021,
yeah, Rio also.
2022.
Yep, Rio also like one of those. Like I feel like getting some of those pieces now is smart, because when they do look back, it's going to be like, okay, we always knew this was AI art. Now we're like, okay, now we have to question if this is AI art. And they're already like in like, hey, no, we're in our section. And like, Claire Silver, she's never like hiding it. She's like, no, I use AI art, right? So I think like that group and the pieces that happened before, and to be honest, it's not just my idea. I was talking to AC Collector, who kind of like got me thinking about this a lot, that there's like going to be like these levels of time periods, specifically with AI art. Because then you're going to get to like that next level in between. There's like the first and the second, and the third one is going to be like, okay, I have no clue anymore. Right. Because it's so good.
Right.
And then you're going to have to rely on another AI bot to tell you if it's AI. And then you're going to have an artist who one day gets caught because he or she said it was real and it wasn't.
Right.
So I think that there's something really nice that we lived through this like very quick 2-3 year time period, where it was like really at the beginning to see that.
I think that was one of the things the blockchain does so well, is like you can prove on this day at this time I had this AI piece. And Shikai, going back to the things
Shikai
I've
also
written, or the things I've read that he's written, talks a lot about that was his kind of motivation to mint anything. Like he felt imposter syndrome. He felt like, man, like I might have not been working long enough to get this out there. But for him, it was, he wanted the provenance of saying like, in February 2023, with these primitive tools, this is what I made. And in April, the tools evolved over 2 months, and here's what I made. And then a year later, here's what I made. And then seeing that progress on like a timeline that can't be like, it's truth. Like there's no, oh, well, maybe he was. It's like, no, like it was minted on this day. It's out there.
Time-stamped.
Yeah.
And him kind of saying that and then talking to Claire is like what made me put out anything, because I had the same imposter syndrome, the same whatever. And I was like, I'm just going to give them to the people who collect the podcast NFTs for free, because then it lets me put out work that I've made and I have no, financial incentive there. It's just like very pure. Like I want to get this on the chain at this time so that people know I was fucking around with that in 2023. Because maybe in 2035, like Benny said, it's going to look way different.
Right.
And maybe we're not going to be able to tell.
Or we don't know. And
at least I'll be able to say like, hey, I was messing around with the early tools and I have proof.
And you have proof and it's there. I think that...
And there's a good amount of it, because there's like a bunch of people who support pods. There's like hundreds, 50 plus
I think
of
it's
everything.
there. I think it's just like that first time period happened. Kevin McCoy created the first NFT. What was it?
2014.
2014, right? 2014. So
did you read Max Carlin's thread about this
Amazing.
yesterday? It was very
so
good.
I just bid on his...
I retweeted it. It was kind of snarky at Sotheby's.
Yeah. It was crazy.
But it was good. It was factually correct.
Factually correct.
And it ties in a lot of the provenance questions, or provenance, things we were talking about. Kevin made that in 2014. He didn't renew it.
Yep.
Somebody else renewed it.
Yep.
Kevin reminted it on Ethereum and then sold it as the token that was made in 2014.
Correct.
And it's just factually not the token that is made in 2014.
Right. But he did create the first NFT.
But he did.
I believe with Rhizome.
But then Sotheby's then markets it as the first, and they're not sharing the real provenance.
Right. Well, that's also classic auction house marketing tactic.
But I did bid on.
Not unreasonable.
I did bid on his first. He has a piece now for his first ordinal that he just inscribed that's on the Sotheby's. Did you see that?
I think I saw them post about
Yeah.
it.
Yes.
Yeah. I
was
think
like,
that's what prompted his thread.
That's what prompted
Yes.
the thread.
Got it.
Yeah, so
quote-tweeted
Max
it.
put out that
Yeah.
like 10
But he's
tweet
a
thread.
really great guy. Actually, I've met him, and he.
But I want to see like, I love when collectors or patrons or anyone puts out something like that,
Yeah.
where it's maybe a hot take, but it's factually correct and it's sharing like this real side of the story.
Right.
I don't want to say real and not real,
Well-
but like it's sharing another side of the story that might not be portrayed by the art media.
Well, I think this space is interesting. I mean, back to your idea of like a sort of our own institution is like we're creating the canon. Like the people who speak up now and do this are going to tell the stories, right? And there are going to be people in 20, 30 years who are going to look at these as documents, as texts. And then they're also going to go back and look at other facts, right? But it's like, you know, I was actually talking to an advisor who advises for a big traditional art collection that's also been doing a lot of digital art, and she and I know each other in traditional art world, and she's like, I'm just getting into it because this collector is really interested in digital, and so we've been amassing an amazing collection. And she's like, but it's so hard because it's like, it's in the traditional art world, you can Google stuff, like people are already writing about it right now. There's all these ways you can figure all this stuff out, but in this space you have to just like be in it to understand what's going on. And so I think it's so important for those kinds of threads that are telling these stories and like this idea of our own institution. And like,
That's kind of interesting. Like, I wonder if maybe we should take the tweets, these stories that you have, as important as they are as essays to be out there. I just wonder how important it is for you to actually put them on chain also, or any of us.
right. That's
Because
probably,
they're there like, this happened to me at this event. Being on chain is so important that you can be like, they lied when they were on chain. But if there's documents,
Right.
especially in a world that we're going to be living in, which we don't know what's going to be real or not, the blockchain is going to serve like this insanely important purpose of like reality.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, we have to start thinking now about how are we archiving all this, you know, to your point. You know, I know Vince is trying to do that a lot with a lot of things he's done, because a lot of stuff, you know, happens on Twitter, and it's like we all remember
Twitter's the worst for
we remember
archiving.
remember the context because we were there, but you know, he's starting to really do a kind of more rigorous project around all of that, which I think is important. Yeah, I mean,
Is that the potato? No, I'm kidding.
what potato? What did I miss?
It's dead.
No, but I have
died. It did die, by the way. Did you hear?
Really? I thought it was still going.
The
OSFs.
Oh yeah, it actually.
the casing broke and the potato rotted.
I think that's very beautiful. How transient.
It's how it should have been.
Yes.
It's how
Yes.
nature intended.
Yes, life finds a way.
Vince texted me and said, "Are you ready to take another trip to London and drop off a potato?" I was like, "Listen, if you have to do it, but you know, I feel like it died in a proper way."
But going back to Twitter and archiving, it's number one. I deleted all my tweets in 2022, so I don't have. I archived it, so
Okay.
I have the Twitter zip file that's like 10 gigs.
Yeah.
But it's not publicly
I
searchable.
always
Yeah.
erase my tweets.
And then,
but like one day, some museum is going to acquire that for their archives. Because like you have all of these archives and museums of like galleries, right? Of things they did, of transaction records, right? Of exhibition. I mean, these are like, do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and it's weird because like we rely on it so much,
Right.
but as a new person, like you said, if they come in, they need to know like what keywords to search for,
Right.
and you can't do it. Like there's
No.
no discoverability. Like,
No.
what are the best 50 art threads that have ever been written on Twitter about our space over the last 3 years? Good luck.
Yeah.
But I can think of very good threads, like things Sanso has written, things you have written, things.
6529 archives his own threads pretty well. Like he has a thread of threads.
Who?
6529.
6529? Yeah.
He has a thread of all of his
that's
threads.
what
Yeah,
he does.
I did a.
But Twitter itself's not a great,
No.
you know, like it could, I mean, Elon even says it, like it could.
I'm very
you know,
curious
it
to
could
see what
die
VVD is
within
doing on that.
however,
Right.
you know, whatever. But yeah, I mean, even within Twitter though, you know, he archives all of his threads within one thread. And I think, I mean, that's a great way to do it within Twitter.
Right.
If Twitter goes down, that's obviously
Well, think
not
about how much shit we've
great,
written in
but-
Telegram and Discord too. Like I've
Right.
written theses
Right.
in Telegram and Discord
Right.
chats that are just gone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do we find a way to save all this?
I mean,
record
it's like
it.
manual work.
blockchain.
It's like
Record
you
it.
aggregate it. Like you were
Yeah.
talking about how you've been writing down moments or inspirations to write essays about.
Yeah.
Like, do you immediately copy and paste it into your own personal like document retention program? Like, what does that
I
look
have it
like?
all on notes in my
Okay.
phone. I have like essays,
Did you
a
know
book
there
of
was
essays and notes that I can just like.
Did you know
add
there's an
to.
app called a journal now on Apple?
I'm journal
know
pilled
that?
now.
I did not know
Apple.
that.
I
Apple.
just found this out yesterday. So.
I told him yesterday. Yeah, Apple added a journal.
I
But
take
anyway,
notes all the time.
you have
Yeah.
your own note process of like, and are you backing up the primary sources within the thing?
No, I probably should.
Because you might not know if it's gonna be there when you go look for it again.
I know.
And it's
Did you write a note down when you first met me?
I hadn't started this process yet.
Okay.
But I actually, what I did for my website, I have a part of my website where I have like writing. So I'll have like a link to a PDF of like art writing that I've done, you know? But then I also, what I did is I actually took all my Twitter threads and I like use Photoshop, and so you can actually physically see the whole thing. And then I have a link back to the tweet. So like if the tweet ever goes down, I already have it.
That's good.
And then I have it kind of visually presented next to art writing, which I think is cool.
That's smart.
Do you want to? So you want to write a book? Like that's what you think?
Well,
next?
okay. My big goal, and I guess this is not going to be on record, is I want to be the Joan Didion of Web3.
Wow.
So I think Joan Didion is a really interesting person who wrote obviously like Slouching Towards Bethlehem and about all these like interesting cultural moments, about her own personal experience, looking at them, being part of them, about what they mean like larger society. And so that's my goal.
That's
I
awesome.
love that.
Yeah.
I started writing a book.
Okay.
Really?
Yeah.
What?
About tunnels?
About tunnels. I'm calling it Tunnels in Web3.
Boring Web3.
No, not the same because I'm strange, but it's similar. Like I'm trying to like write just from my perspective what all this looks like.
Right.
Again, I'm never going to publish anything because I'm a terrible writer, but I do love being able to express that. You know, I think that we're missing somebody like you to tell that story, because I think other people who are not in our space would go like, oh, I want to read this. This is really interesting. You know, I this is something I don't know enough about. And instead of it being like, I'm going to tell you why NFTs are the best, or I'm going to tell you why they're a scam, you're coming from a perspective of like, I just want to tell you what happened.
Right.
And I love that. Like, those are just like, you know, like to me, I think we all should be journaling or writing like that. When I take my notes down and I write that, I'm always like, I mean, I tweet usually how I feel also, obviously. But I'm trying to put that in perspective. And again, maybe it's just for my kids to read one day, but I do love what you're doing because I think we're missing that.
Right.
You know, it's an important message to get out.
Right.
You know, like you've seen from your own eyes all these different people. I mean,
well, I also came into a bit later than all of you guys. I didn't enter until like 2021, right? So I think that I still have like the before times kind of close to me, you know, and I still spend a lot of time with like before times people. And so I think that's been helpful for me to, you know, understand this space better. But I also think I want to help be the person to connect those two things, right?
I think that you should have a chapter about Vince. And we should make up a rumor that he's not really, he's like, he's from like Australia.
He's a digital entity.
He's like,
not even real.
Yeah, he's not even real.
He's
like,
AI.
he's 5 people. Yeah, he's AI.
He's actually Claire Silver.
He's Claire Silver, right? Exactly. Like we should do something, you know,
He's
like
Beanie.
Yeah, he's being. Oh no, don't say that. That might actually annoy him. So the other stuff I think he would love. That's like pushing the limit. Poor Vince, he would not like that one.
No one wants to be
But
that.
I also don't want to think that like none of us are, we all are authorities, but we're not the authority. No one's the
100%.
authority. Like there is no expert, you know, there isn't. Like everyone has expertise, but like
two sides to every story too.
Absolutely.
We were talking about that earlier.
Absolutely.
And I remember a tweet I wrote about how there's no experts and how many people I got. Not a lot, but there was, I don't want to say names. A few people wrote to me and wrote on the tweet and then wrote to me personally that how wrong I was because they are an expert. And I was like, wow,
And they're
what
extremely
makes
humble.
you an expert? I have my PhD in digital art. That doesn't make you an expert in what just happened in the last 4 years.
No.
You can't. Like, you know, I cannot stress this enough. There are no experts right now in what we're doing. There is people who have, like you said, some expertise, some knowledge, but anybody who is here and saying, I collected this artist first, so therefore I know what I'm doing, I can tell you is bad for the space. I don't think
agree.
it's good for the space.
I agree.
Because again, like I said last
Unless you're
time.
Mode Rats.
What?
Unless you're Mode Rats,
Yeah.
who has 300x copies and
No,
he can say that.
I mean, he could look, but he could say like he collected and he had
Yeah,
early inclination on understanding what X copy was. but that doesn't make him an expert in telling
you can argue
artists
they're
what to
more
do.
of like a historian. He's more of a blockchain historian than a digital art.
But
expert.
even a blockchain historian, I mean,
like
blockchain is
quote,
like
unquote.
15 years old.
Yeah.
I mean, what are we talking about?
Just
Like
someone who analyzes the blockchain and like keeps up with it.
agreed.
It's not like an expert. There's there's no expert.
The
You're
more
an early adopter.
credentials you see in someone's Twitter bio, the less you should trust them.
That's why mine is easy. I don't know if did you see my new one now?
No.
So
Mine just says I know nothing and then a whole bunch of shitty words in the podcast.
I have the face decided to call me a rare Pokemon
yeah.
when we travel together. So I wrote, I'm a rare Pokemon building tunnels.
Benny's obsessed with the tunnels. I don't think Benny has ever been so proud to be Jewish as when he found out there were tunnels.
My favorite thing was that you just owned it. You're like, before I get weird backlash, I'm just gonna rock.
Just gonna put it out
Yeah,
there.
Benny was actually.
Yeah, Derek.
That's where you've been every Saturday.
Yeah, everybody kept asking me, so I was like, yeah, I mean, I'm just gonna go with it. I mean, you know, we all build tunnels. I have a tunnel straight to Brian's house. It's great.
I bet you do.
Yeah.
And the school.
Yeah,
It's all a network.
100%.
So when it gets cold, you can just go
it's
to the
free.
school.
By the way, no joke. In Minnesota, if you go to college there, they have like underground tunnels.
Yeah, we
to
learned
get-
that at VCon.
Right, because
Crazy,
it's cold.
right? Yeah.
Well, Chicago
Nuts.
too has underground tunnels in like the Loop area because
Yeah,
it's so cold.
It's so cold.
Yeah, I actually have never used those, but anyway.
I had a friend tell me a bad story about doing the tunnel in Chicago, and it's like a homeless dude just peed down there.
Yeah.
It's just like not the vibe. And I was
Not
like,
the vibe.
Sounds like Web3.
I was like, man, it sounds like New York. It's like I'm on the
Yeah.
subway.
So you grew up in New York also?
I grew up in San Francisco.
San Francisco,
actually.
wow.
But I lived in Berlin when I was little.
And that's how you know German.
And when did you move to New York?
Well, I actually lived in New York when I was little, but I moved to New York basically when I went to college for NYU.
Yeah.
And then I went to Chicago because I wanted to just try something else. And I worked at Monique Malache Gallery. We actually worked with Amy Sherrill, who painted Michelle Obama's portrait, but before she was famous. Also, she's a great example. She was in her early 40s when she got discovered.
Wow.
And I just saw her recently, and now she's with Hauser and Wirth with $1 Million paintings.
Also, the artist who did the portrait of them together, what's his name? He was just at the Whitney.
Henry Taylor.
Right. He was also older.
Yeah.
He was working at like
Yeah, he was working at a
old
like,
age home or something.
Yeah,
right?
like it was like a mental
Like a psych
institution.
ward. Yeah.
And then he got his degree and he took like 5 years late in life.
And he was like painting the patients because he had no one to paint.
Yeah, you saw the show.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I went.
it's a
I was
beautiful
so
show.
crazy. By the way, the show was amazing.
Yeah.
And I'm so sorry. I went like 2 days early before it opened. A friend of mine had a like VIP thing to get in, and so I went during the day, and I had just missed him.
Oh yeah,
the artist. I heard he's amazing.
He's a nut.
But it was crazy. So they put this whole amazing. You should go if it's still open while you're here. I think it is. And there's a back room that's just this white room.
Right.
There's nothing in there. So he decided to paint a
did-
mural.
Yeah, it's like a
They
site
said like he
specific.
just said like he took it, people said you were just standing there. He's like just started drawing and he painted this whole room and the room looks insane.
Yeah.
Like but he was older also.
He was older also, but yeah, I mean, it's like, I think that youth is very important, and it's cool that artists can come in and be super young and just do stuff. But we also have to remember that like the more experience you have as a human being, right? You have wisdom, you gain insights into the world that are really meaningful,
So
right?
you're saying there's still a chance for me?
Well, no, I think we might do a bad job in our space in particular, giving some of the older artists like attention or credit. We have this, a lot of us are online all the time, and they're not online all the time. They're doing other stuff.
Right.
And then they come in and they put something out that's really thoughtful, really well done. And since they're not known on spaces or haven't been on a bunch of pods or whatever, like people might not give it the attention it deserves. Like we were talking with Tony yesterday about this, where certain people come in, they drop something with a big partner. It's like crickets. And it's like, well, what is that group of people looking for? And I think we do a kind of a bad job sometimes.
You know who does a great job at it?
Who?
Haftka.
Oh yeah.
Like I love I to be fair, I don't own anything yet. I've been waiting to get the right thing from him.
You'll know it when you see it.
And I'm hoping to visit his studio because he's in New York. We should have him on the pod next time, actually, him and his wife. But he's one of those guys who's embraced, like, I've had a whole career and now all of a sudden I have this resurgence online. He does all these videos. Like, I love that. Like, I love that he like.
But he's like
takes
very
that in.
online.
Right.
And he's
Yeah,
very
yeah.
I think
relatable.
it's
For sure.
Like he gets it.
I think it's tough now for artists because the prerequisite is you have to be like grinding on Twitter.
Yeah.
Like that's the prereq is you need to have this brand on Twitter.
Agreed.
And that's going to be limiting for a lot of people.
Or
Like
maybe,
the best people probably, or some of them.
Yeah.
Or maybe we have to get away from that. Like Brendan Dawes doesn't, grind on Twitter, but Brendan Dawes is very successful in what he's doing. Like he's making amazing digital art, and he just got a professorship, I think, in London. So I think that we have to get away from that a little. Like I know there was artists. I made a comment that like, look, I think that there's a difference between artists who left and artists who took some time to do more work, right? And I think, I was very vocal in the sense, like, I am not that nobody's not allowed back. Everybody's allowed back. It's a free world, right?
Right.
But I will look and have, want to support more of those artists that did stick around. And that doesn't mean they always tweeted. I didn't need them to tweet, but they were working.
Right.
There's plenty of artists who I know that who are now coming back. And, they're like, oh, I'm thinking about doing a new project. And I'm like, well, I'm just curious, what were you doing for the last, year and a half? I was traveling. I was doing this. I started working there. Like, great. But like, you didn't have to stop working. Right. You could have honed in on your skills,
Or learned a new skill.
Correct. Corey was taking his time traveling to like Camp Narnia, wherever he goes.
Ayahuasca retreat.
Ayahuasca
His retreats.
So
Yeah.
he wasn't
the
tweeting that
frogs
much.
and
Right.
toads.
Well, I guess
working on his art.
I think it also in this space, it is like the traditional art world. It's like you don't necessarily have to be yourself grinding on Twitter, but to go back to this idea of patronage is you need to have people in your corner who are going to speak up for you and not just buy your work, but to really
Agreed.
represent you in rooms when you're not there, and I think that in traditional art galleries, this is something that I think we should be bringing into this space, is a really good gallerist is someone who is your patron. Like they are speaking for you, they are talking to collectors for you, they are positioning you so you can make work. Like I also worked at Marion Boesky Gallery. We worked with like Frank Stella, but like, for example, she was one of the first patrons or people to really bring Murakami to the market. And she has these great stories of like, bringing Murakami to art fairs around the world for years before anyone gave a shit. You know what I mean? And like that is something that's I think important. It's something that like AOTM is trying to do. That's something that I personally really feel like passionate about is like being these artists kind of like patron, right? And bringing them into places where they maybe can't access or maybe they're not going to go. A lot of these artists also like. I am a monster. I like going to all these events and talking to people all the time. I like that. I enjoy doing that. I know that's an insane, weird thing that most people hate.
Extrovert.
Yeah. But a lot of these artists are like, I don't want to do that and I don't want to have to be speaking there. And it's also like, then it's kind of, is it shilly if they're talking about their work? But if you have someone that is respected, who has a voice that can talk to people, then I think that's really important. And like, that's a part of patronage
and
too.
I think also good artists could be patrons too. I mean, I know
Yes.
like, everybody, one thing about people that I always appreciated more than anything. And I'll say for Xcopy and Rafiq also, and Sam, let's say all four of them. I would say that what I appreciate about all of them besides their art, some of it I appreciate art more obviously than others, is that you can't deny the fact that even after their success, they stayed around to help other artists, in my opinion, in this community, right? Like people could have sold something for $69 million, said, peace out, guys. Fuck off. I don't give a shit. Instead, he built a studio, and then 5-6 times a year, he's flying. He invites people down and puts their art up.
Yeah.
Xcopy could have also just walked away like Pac, but Xcopy sits there, not only tweets, buys art, supports artists. Sam, obviously, we know goes out of his way. He's having conversations, supporting artists, and Rafiq, also. Always putting out the right words for artists, buying their art. I think there's something to say about I do like about those four specifically that they all could have just been like, I'm out of here, and didn't. And I think for artists to be patrons for artists, I think is a super important aspect of all this to make it work as well.
Yeah, I think I personally see a lot of it even on from that's only on the price spectrum, like on the lower end, like a lot of those artists are all supporting each other.
Yeah.
And it's amazing. Like obviously, I would advise everyone, keep enough money to survive.
Put your mask on first.
Keep enough money to survive so that you can keep creating art. But it's crazy because you'll see, and also that's a big way that I like to discover art is by going to artists that I like and looking at who they retweet, who they reply to,
100%.
who they like, and all this other stuff. And then I end up down a rabbit hole going through 40 different artists and, you know, discovering all this new
artists
work.
know the best artists.
It's true. I mean, and it also, like, it comes, a lot of this in general, especially, you know, the nature of it being on Twitter, is about attention. So like, and about what we were saying a little bit like 5 minutes ago, though, if you are leaving Twitter, like, I think that you should at least be trying to make connections so that there's still like the attention. People, you know, with attention on Twitter, some people will say, oh, like more is better, which, I mean, I think personally quality is over quantity. You know, you could have tons of views and tons of likes and tons of this and not be able to sell work for, you know, on a regular basis. And then you can have people who are not so active on Twitter, but are working on making connections with the right people and, you know, making connections that will further their work in the long run and better them. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. If you leave Twitter and it's because you want to work on making connections in the traditional world, that's amazing. Like, you know, as long as you're not, as Benny was saying, as long as you're not leaving Twitter to just fuck off and do nothing and go like to a beach somewhere, like that's like whatever. But you know, if you're working,
maybe that adds to their life experience,
correct,
and then they come back and make great art too. Like I'm not trying to.
Again, I'm not judging anybody. Somebody asked me when I did tweet it why it was brought up. They said, would you not buy art from people who left? I was like, no, it's not that, but I am paying attention.
Yeah.
Right. And, you know, I think there's something about to watch somebody like Andre, for instance, who's just like always trying to change his way up to make sure that he's staying relevant. Yeah, and his art is staying relevant. His skills are staying relevant.
Right.
Like that's
important.
important.
I mean, you know, he did like our first check-in call because, you know, he did this project with the Transient Labs and we made a nice little chunk there. So thanks for that. But I was like, so what are you doing? And he's like, oh, I got a 3D printer. I'm like, what? He's like, yeah, I really want to start like making objects and like integrating them with my digital. And so like, I'm just going to learn all this. I'm setting this up. I'm like, that's great. I love that. Love to hear it.
That to me is
amazing.
That to me is somebody who is dedicated to their art, their process, and their skills. You know, you know, people like Patrick, for instance. You know, I think he's a great example. Patrick Amadon. That, you know, he announced that every 10% that he's going to give out, let's say he make out of 100%, he's going to give 10% back to artists. You know, to me, like, you know, that's something a lot of us have done in the past, anyways, from the money we made. But I think him announcing it, some people were like, whatever. I'm like, you know what? You can look at any which way you want with Patrick, but the sense that he said it will probably drive hopefully some other artists.
It makes people think differently about
and I like that. You know, I think Patrick thinks outside the box. Now he does his, you know, now he's doing this whole other thing about getting artists' names out there and trying to
404,
404, right? And I think we just need more things like that. So I think I'm pretty like excited and bullish. I know there's going to be these low points that we're still going to have, but it does feel like we're scaling up in being more professional, more noticed, more serious.
And creating a foundation.
Yeah, and I don't think we're taking away the silliness. I've always said this, like the silliness is part of who we are.
It's part of culture.
But I think we're getting better at being cohesive.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I think there's definitely like some leveling up that we're all doing because these are new processes, these are new things, and we're building, you know.
And
we also have like to take into consideration market cycles. And
100%.
There's just, as a human, you're gonna go through many market cycles throughout your life. There's gonna be times where it's time to harvest, and you know you have to harvest when it's time to harvest. If there's a year like 2021, you have to take advantage of it. But then when it's clearly not a harvesting year, it's like you need to build your skills so that the next time you can harvest, you have something to harvest. It's like almost like planting the seeds for the next
I'm going to tell you a story. There was a person named Joseph. Do you know Joseph
from the Bible?
Yeah.
Okay.
We all know this story. So this is we're going to give you Jew 101 here. Joseph got sold to the Egyptians by his brothers. So it was a crazy story.
They floored him.
Yeah.
They floored him to the Egyptians.
They floored him. They totally robbed
him. The Egyptians had a rap teeth bid.
Yep. They threw him. They floored him. They threw him in a pit.
They hacked their dad's wallet.
Hacked the dad's wallet. Went home. Told him that their wallet got hacked. But really, they rugged him. He got sold as a slave to the Egyptians. So he's down in Egypt, and the king of Egypt, the pharaoh, comes up to him and says, I had a dream. Joseph says I had a dream. He's like, what was your dream? He's like, I had a dream that there was 7 years of plentiful, amazing stuff, and then 7 years of famine. He saw like cows that were mangled and all this other stuff. Anyways, so he decided that he told him, he's like, what you need to do is take all of your food and your grain and store it now and take away a certain percentage for the 7 years that you're going to have famine, because then you'll be ready for it and then your people will be happy with you. And therefore he did it. And the Pharaoh became this great Pharaoh, and Joseph became like a king there.
There's a lot of wisdom in that.
A lot of wisdom. I mean, we all know that.
It might not be 7 years.
Yeah.
But
well, could be. I mean, it feels like it sometimes.
never know.
You have
but you have to just be prepared for that.
Yeah, like we go back to 2021, and something we felt, something everybody felt was just like, it's going to last forever.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, they're making $100,000 every month or every
Super
couple
cycle.
months. They were spending 80 of it. Because it's
And
like, well, I'm
that's
going to make it 120.
Every cycle, it's like that. Like
every cycle.
2000.
I've only seen it like 2.5-3 times, but
2014, like I said before, people were euphoric, right? The Bitcoin was at like $1,200, I think.
I mean, even the stock market, like 2008, before that.
People were going nuts. I remember
Big stock market boom in 2000.
Then 2015 happens, and then Mt. Gox happens, and it falls down to $100.
Yeah,
right?
we have another pandemic. Like, we don't know.
And then people were not.
They're in the lab doing shit. We don't know.
Actually, the pandemic is interesting because that brought so many people online. That
Yeah.
fueled all of this.
And also the money, the stimulus, and
Totally,
everything,
but like that's so interesting that
another
this like
pandemic.
this time of a time of like what a barren time actually became very fruitful. You know what I mean? And I think that's really beautiful.
We had so many people in this space who would have never been here, or maybe have taken 10 years to get here because of the pandemic.
Right.
Yeah.
Like,
I think it's sped up a lot. Like if you think about how much technology got sped up in that time period, you know, it's so interesting, right? Working
in the school, you got to see.
Working at a school, I used to say to people all the time, like, yo, you know, one of my main jobs when I first started was bringing technology to school. And there was a time, this is before the pandemic, I used to say like, you know, we should start thinking about having, you know, remote teachers, right? It'll save us some money and we're probably going to do it. And people are like, nah, technology doesn't work that way. Pandemic happens in one day, like literally, let's say one day, but in a few weeks, every school across this country became remote.
Right.
Just like that.
Right.
Now, were the students ready? And there were some pitfalls. I do agree with people like, yes, they weren't paying attention as much, whatever. But if we focused and harnessed our time to do that together, remote learning actually could be a huge success, even for younger students. And I'm not saying like, you know, we just get rid of IRL, but the idea that we were able to advance the technology so quick, right? And there was this great study right before the pandemic that from the McKinsey Foundation, I think it was, that basically said that 51% of the jobs that exist right now, this is right before the pandemic, can be automated within next few years. And that was before the pandemic. That was before all this AI stuff. So now you have to imagine like how much more that's going to happen pretty quickly.
Well, it's already started to happen too.
Yeah. I mean, I'm probably out of a job by next year. So once you see this podcast,
AI could take care of any job.
Yeah.
You're just in the office, in the Telegram chat.
Well, if I could like print out another me, like a clone, and just like put my AI into it, that could work. I have like multiples of me. I have one at my house.
Did you ever get the idea when you were in school, when he was your professor, that he's just in the office and Telegram chats trading shit coins?
No.
Back
then, no.
Does that come across?
I got into crypto like about 8 months after that year. So like,
you can give me some credit. You could just say
end of 2016, early 2017.
That was good timing.
Yeah, it was.
I don't know how Benny
Bitcoin was like sub
compartmentalizes
2K.
himself so well, because I feel like it's all he thinks about is just like the space.
Who?
Like you.
Oh.
Like, how are you not talking about like Sam Spratt, all your favorite artists in school?
No, I do. In school, I talk about it all the time.
Okay.
A lot of the art that I get from artists, I tell them. I usually put up in the classroom.
Gotcha.
So cool.
Stuff like that. Yeah. In my, if you go to our office and
Yeah.
you're just there. I have like a million pieces of art and I just put them up in different places.
Okay, I love
Like,
that. I feel like it'd be too hard for you to compartmentalize. No, like, you like it too much.
I think I'm pretty open about it. Like I love art. So like to me, it's like, I brought artists out there, you know, to do projects over there with the kids. F.Dot's coming to do something.
That's amazing.
Oh, F.
I love that.
Yeah.
I feel like his art really.
That's
leans
why
toward
I wanted to save him for April, because he'll be done with that project, so we could talk about it.
Sick.
So
I love that.
and you know, it's going to be a nice sort of correlation between his work and, you know, the school and what we're going through and stuff.
You
like that.
kind of inspired me to get more involved in my local community. Like I don't have any ties to my local community. Like I don't.
You should.
I've been to the Columbus Art Museum like 3 times.
I love that.
But
you should like join. You should become a patron there.
I don't
you
know
should.
like any people involved with it. Like I don't know.
How far away is Toledo from you?
2 hours.
You should. I'm gonna introduce you to Adam. You should join. I became a patron there.
Nice.
You come visit me.
I would.
I'm
gonna come.
definitely going. There's a Caravaggio show that's opening there.
Really?
Yes, it's opening this. Yeah, I think this month or next month. So
Let me
I'm gonna
know when
go.
you
Yeah, I would love to.
Because I drive through Toledo to go pick up weed.
We should do it.
I think,
Field trip.
I think I'm going to that same weekend event. So
Yeah.
He's
That's
really
exciting.
great stuff.
And there's a Marisol show, I think, opening as well.
Yeah.
Who, speaking of forgotten histories, Marisol was like Warhol's collaborator, and she was actually more famous than Warhol at one point, and people just forgot. And now now there's a resurgence. But like these are the kinds of things that we have the power to like really keep set the record now.
I actually love this story. I want you to tell because my wife told me that my wife has a master's in art history.
Right.
She's the one who got me really into loving art. She once told me about Marisol, and she's like, I was talking about Warhol. She's like, talk about Warhol all the time. I talk about Marisol. I was like, looked at her. I was like, oh, fuck Marisol is.
Right. No
which
one
is
knows.
fine, by the way, because I'm very open about how I know nothing about art. I'm still learning.
That's
like
fair.
you and I
Everyone's
are
learning.
very much like that. But I think this story is fascinating because like she was just like forgotten.
She was just forgotten.
And she was like this, like you have all these documentaries about him, and no one really talks about how she was like this important, imperative part of his career.
Absolutely.
Creativity.
They were like
growth.
basically like artistic partners at one point. And
What time frame was this?
In like the 60s,
Okay,
70s.
early 60s.
Yeah. And then there was a show at Pres Art Museum in Miami like a few years ago where it was about Marisol and Warhol, but it really focused on her and retold this story. I think in traditional art world, often, women, people of color just didn't make it into this into the bucket, and now there's a resurgence of like remembering that, right? But I think in this space we can we can set the record now.
And I think it's important for us now to push on that a little bit, like, especially with Web3, that we have an opportunity to at least be better about inclusivity.
Right.
And especially with artists.
Yeah.
And, look, I'm a big fan of Yatreda, Clara. I mean, there's so many amazing, artists out there who are not just, white and look like me.
Right.
And I think, like Ed, who is one of my favorite people in the whole world.
We love Ed.
How much he tries and changes and he cares so much about his craft. Right. I think is super important. So I think that we definitely need to focus. We have an opportunity to, in my opinion, utilize that also without going too far to the other side. It's
I agree.
I see it as like an opportunity where people who have skills, who are not just white men,
right? We
could actually see their art.
Right.
So let's focus on that. Let's not go overboard and be like, okay, let's do everything.
Right.
But at least they have this ability to have the stage finally.
Right.
And I think with social media and this access, it's really important for us to like focus on that.
I agree. I think it's a yes and, right? It's
Correct.
like not an either or. And right. I also don't think it's fair in the traditional art world that like white men just don't matter anymore. Like that's not fair. Yeah. Like that sucks. That's that's like a bummer.
Like you want to find that like middle of the road,
right?
I talked to Julie Pacino a lot about this, right? Mm-hmm. She's like, I had this access to be this person as a female, as a and with her partner, who is amazing. We had them on the pod that we're never going to release because it was extremely inappropriate on so many levels. But it was one of the best. We had two. I don't know if you guys know this. We have two podcasts that are archived.
From LA.
Okay. That will never see the light of day.
It was basically because Ayla gave us a book before
that was the first mistake.
And the book was on the table, and Benny just had to keep asking questions from the book. And the book was called The Little Book of Sex Questions. So I will let you envision what conversations looked like with Julie and Audie, and also with Snowfro. So we had two great conversations that will never see the light of day.
Never see the light of day.
Maybe one day.
Yeah.
Maybe one
Actually,
day.
I have the best ever. I don't know if you saw
I never
this.
know what you're going to do. And you say something like,
I'm not gonna we're going to get your reactions to this, but like... don't kill this episode too. No, I'm not.
Benny was just thinking about the book again.
Wait, what's Dai's name again on Twitter?
While we were going on about this,
no,
Mark Wilson?
No, but no. What's his name on Twitter? What is it again? It's not
Toad Swyback. Yeah. I have typed in his name.
I know, and you can't find it.
And
I know.
I'm
I've done it. Yes, I've done the same.
We have a group chat. We used to do a space about once a month, him and Xerox. And this kind of goes back to my point about underrepresented artists. But we had a space called Con Air, and it was just like more obscene than a podcast with Benny. Just like, let's just improv a whole space about anything.
Yeah.
And anyway, you talk to Xerox. He's from Iran. You talk to him about his upbringing, and you realize there's this whole world of artists who get no exposure or very little exposure just because they live across the world.
Totally.
Like we in Megazord have collected some art from Hussein.
Yep, that was a great piece. Oh, and that was a crazy story because remember we couldn't get in contact with him because he got arrested.
Yes,
right?
by the police in Iran.
Police, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And C3.
We just bought his piece, and we were texting him, and
He has a crazy new piece out right now called Umbrella that makes you want to cry.
I actually have
when
to hit him up.
it.
I haven't spoken to him in a while, but it was just like a really strange feeling. We're like, oh, so happy, and he's like, we didn't hear from him for 2 weeks, and he's like, yeah, guys, I'm really sorry. I was arrested. I'm like, what?
But like we take that for granted in America. Like he can't even, create his art and speak his mind without the government knocking on his door and being like, you're in fucking trouble.
Right. Yeah.
And it's on us to have those conversations and seek out those different, I feel like, engagements that you don't just get by being passive.
Right.
Like you have to have some intent behind what you're looking for. And when you talk to him about his work, it's beautiful. He has a whole story, a whole process. There's all this symbolism that you don't get immediately. Like you need to zoom in, look at the objects on the table, look at how things are positioned, look at how his body posture is and what he's trying to convey. And there's like a deep meaningfulness there that, you have to search out. Like you're not going to get it just on your phone, on Twitter.
Right.
And it's tough because we give so much damn time to Twitter, and it's like really good in some aspects, but it ruins other aspects.
Yeah, it's like, that deep relationship. All right, I'm gonna show you the best GIF ever. We're not gonna be able to put it on, okay?
Okay.
Because I'm not allowed to share it with everybody.
Oh my god, it's the Snowfro one.
Yeah, so I asked Di to make a specific GIF of Snowfro that I've given to only him, so only two of us have. Okay, ready? Hold on.
God, that's brilliant.
Right?
Amazing.
Is that not the best
And it's
GIF?
so it's like
Don't
of
describe
course.
it because he'll get upset because he told me it's not no one let it be. But how he's allowed to let us show it. But it's brilliant,
That's
right?
fantastic.
I mean, Di
That's
I think
fantastic.
Benny looks at that once a day.
I
Yeah,
would.
probably.
I would.
It lives on my Twitter DMs because he told me I'm not allowed to save it to my phone. So,
But going back to Di too,
Yeah,
like,
Di's
he is
great.
one of the most prolific writers.
Yes.
He is.
Yeah.
People don't realize.
know this.
That's my favorite thing. Honestly, his work is the writing.
I have a couple of his books.
Yeah.
Very Shitty Jobs is hilarious. But then he did one of the pieces for Escher was Big Election Day, and he has like a 10,000 word essay on Big Election Day, which is where every American goes to South Bend, Indiana to vote on the election. And it's like every American is forced into this trough in Indiana. And it's a 10,000 word story. And it's like most people who buy the piece probably don't even know that the writing exists with it. But he is so prolific in both the amount of art that he makes, but then the amount that he writes about it.
Right.
His work is great. He my favorite piece he ever made, actually, Vince bought, was that like he made this very dark, heavy piece that nobody really like. He got a lot of likes on, but it wasn't like the same as his other stuff. And I was so happy because Vince was like, I was talking to him and he bought it, and I was like, that's actually one of my favorite pieces I ever bought. And I was talking to Mark about it, and the depth that went into it, and I started to get to know more about him. I was like, man, he's there, like he's
Mark
a real
and
artist.
Xerox are two of my favorite people.
Both of them like really get it, and I think they fly under the radar, especially Di, because his stuff can come off as like funny, but
It comes off,
But it's extremely smart.
It's extremely
It's
smart.
very, very. I mean,
Exactly.
they're texts, right? I mean, they're visual, but they're ultimately these like sort of semiotic things.
Yes,
they're
and
really, really
with
smart.
a message
With
that
a message
he's trying to give off. So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Well, AOT will be working with him.
I heard. By
exciting.
now, 2 months from now, this will be announced.
I know.
So you could say it now.
But also, I wanted to say just this idea of patronage too, and this idea of deeper relationships. AOTM will also be. We're starting an artist residency where we're going to have artists who are maybe a little more under the radar.
I was very excited.
And
when I
we'll
heard
be
this.
doing This is my first week on the job initiative.
Oh, that's nice.
And then Vince is like, okay, so we'll just get it started like next week. I was like, I was thinking next quarter. He's like, no, we can get it done. And he's like, let's go. I'm like, okay,
Let's go.
But the idea is really to like be a patron and like to provide like, creative strategy, like career development, and then also do critiques and like studio visits with artists. So we have 3 artists from like around the world at different points in their career. That'll be like our first cohort. and then we'll sell their work via AOTM, and then we'll also, you know, have one of their works or one or two of their works come into the AOTM collection. So like starting a sort of our own mini museum, right? But the idea is really to create these deeper relationships with the artists and help them.
And this is how a lot of times it works in the trad art world, right?
Yeah. I mean, like a lot of you have residencies, like Scout Hegan has an amazing residency, and that becomes sort of a tastemaker. It's like, it's almost as if you put that on your resume. Like the Rubels do that as well. You were at the opening in Miami. But I think that's something that I'm really, really excited about. And I think it allows AOTM to also work with artists that aren't, you know, the top artists, but because I mean, Vince buys so much emerging art.
Yes.
And so many artists who aren't who are
quietly also.
I mean,
quietly. Now that we're on the topic, like I feel like, you know, obviously I'm biased, like usual. But
we're all biased.
We're all biased.
We all have our own bias.
Vince is, you know, a very close friend, but I also think that Vince, you know, like unfortunately, people will tend to think that like, oh, it was very easy for him to collect all the art he did. But I always argue, I'm like, okay, first of all, that is not as easy as you think it was. And second of all, if you look now at what he collected and what's still popular, it wasn't just because he bought it and the price went up. It was because he understands art. I mean, every time I talk to him, he's like, oh, I'm visiting the MoMA today. Oh, I'm visiting the Whitney. Like he delves himself into art to understand it so much. That's why I appreciate him as an artist.
I agree.
More than a collector sometimes. Because I think, you know, like old kidding aside with the hot potato and, you know, some of the other things he's coming out with now that I'm sure I told you that he puts a lot of, you know, thought into the conceptual art. You know, he's not going to be a painter like Sam is, but his art is going to be different. You know?
Absolutely.
You know,
No,
and I think that's really...
Yeah. I mean, I think having lots of conversations with him about all of these things, I also am working with him on those. He's really, really thoughtful, and they're all really conceptual. Like they're really smart and interesting, and there's like a precedent for this and like relational aesthetics. That's what I sort of started my hot potato.
Relational aesthetics.
Relational aesthetics.
Say it 3 times fast.
Relational aesthetics?
Yes.
Relational
if you go to
aesthetics.
my hot potato tweet, it's grounded in this. And it's like Nicolas Bourriaud had this idea about relational aesthetics. It's like art that's about the interaction. It's not just interactive, but it's about what happens when the idea gets put out into the world and then people participate in it and then it ends up becoming something else, right? So I think there's a real precedent for that. Web3 in general, right, is so much about our relationships. I mean, and sort of, yeah.
Isn't this
there's
like
a lot of rant that I can go on.
Like we had Tony yesterday. We have Annika today. Like how smart they are. When like just like hearing this, I'm like, I it's like being on that level of like their art IQ. Like we need more of their voices to be heard.
That's why we're here.
That's why we're doing this.
That's what the
Like,
pod's about.
seriously,
It's very rare that you get to hear people for a long amount of time uninterrupted. It's like most of the time it's a space. You're on your phone because you're on a space. There's notifications flying. There's group chats going on.
But they're not even seeing the tweets. It's like we said with Tony yesterday, especially with your tweet. Sometimes it's like, this tweet should have 1,000 likes. And then I say, like, some guy puts their balls on fire and it has 2,000 likes. You're like, I don't understand this.
It's very hard with Twitter now because as someone who uses Twitter for like 8 to 12 hours a day normally, you need to have a bunch of lists. And they're hard to curate. But they're not hard to curate necessarily. But when you follow, like, I follow 6,000 people. If I just go to what they feed me in the trough of For You, for whatever reason, like 25% of it isn't even from people I follow. I'm like trying to see what the top tweets from the people I follow
So you make a list?
So I make lists, and then up top, you pin the list.
Wait, you can make a list?
I haven't done this myself, but it's a really good idea.
So,
of like different accounts?
You can make your own list, and you can also what's interesting is you can make them public or private.
Yes, so I have both. I have a public one that I have stopped maintaining as much as I should.
Yeah.
But then I have one that's private that is just people I've collected art from. So it's like if I own any piece from them, I hopefully remembered when I bought the piece.
Go back.
Okay.
So they all show up here, Benny. So I am collecting NFT. Left. I got one for fantasy sports. I got one for trading.
It should be lists.
But I have to maintain those lists, and then I have to consistently go in.
Make one bottom right.
And then
update them.
I add people.
Yep.
Benny's
list.
So Benny always learns a new tech thing on just about every podcast. Like it's kind of fun to teach him. But the issue with the list is you have to maintain it.
Right.
So if you're like, I want to make a list of my favorite collectors so that I can have some signal of what's going on in the collector market, then I need to sit there and be like, what are my favorite collectors?
So I just add Aniko and that's it?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, you said add. and
I'll
then-
add 25, 50 people.
You're my first person on my list.
Oh, yay. Is
There
there a
you
co-op
go.
for that?
So
I'll send it to you.
then, Benny, when you pin it
Yeah.
and you go to your Twitter and you
Yeah.
go to the like For You page, it'll be at the top and it'll show different names.
Sweet.
So
Now
you-
I go here. Then why don't I see it?
You have to add
Because
it
you
in
have to pin it.
settings.
How do I pin it?
I have a couple, but I don't I really just stay on the following tab.
Go
I
into
don't really use
lists.
it. Sometimes I'll scroll through some
And then
lists,
there's a
but
pin.
Oh,
I actually sometimes
okay.
I scroll through
Now-
Jesus list.
Do you scroll mine?
Sometimes, yeah.
So now
you
look
have
at
a
the top.
list, and I can add your. Oh,
So now you have Benny's list.
and look, Aniko was first.
Yes.
There you go.
So the issue with
Nice.
my list,
Yeah.
Brian, is that I have a list of like NFT people, but it's like 700 people and it's almost too big.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's a lot of artists. It's almost every artist I collect from is in the list of the NFT people, but it's also all the collectors, it's marketplaces, it's probably the fucking super
Yeah.
rare bot. Like I put everything in there.
Right.
But it's almost too much when you go
Right.
to it.
It's like the map becomes a territory and then it's a problem.
So then it's like, okay, I make a new list of
Right.
people I'm just collecting art from.
Yeah.
Then I make a new list of just collectors.
Right.
Yeah.
But then it's like half the time you click on somebody, you're like, oh, I already put them on
But
the
that's
list.
great. You're like curating your Twitter.
But it's
Yeah.
a pain
No,
because
but
now I have
once
7.
you get over a certain amount of people, it becomes the same issue you had originally, where
Right.
you're not
Yeah.
seeing everyone's.
Yes.
Then it's
tweets.
just a Twitter's
So you have to
page.
make
So
it
then
even
I rely
smaller,
on like
and
this
then-
is why I fucking love Roger. Because at least like he
Yes.
kind of I can offload the sales stuff.
Right.
Or the bid stuff
Yeah.
and just know that okay, if I look at this once a day,
Yeah.
I'm gonna get
It's
an
the
update
TLDR.
on everything I missed,
Yeah.
and then I can like take that out of my Twitter. list.
yeah, I think that Roger, Mando, NFT
Mando for trading.
NFT
Right.
statistics.
Yeah.
both-
Yeah, Tyler.
I literally made a list. By the way, I think
Yeah.
that's the 4 of them.
Yeah,
just
those-
to get updates
Right.
on
Those
all,
4
like, the whole market.
Those 4 like gives me like everything
But,
updated,
like, I need
and
a
then
new list
the
with,
Medici
like-
minutes during the week give me like more of like the overview of what's going
What's
on.
gonna be the new mutants to
Yeah.
the punks that you know when to sell?
And those are going to be such great resources in like 20 years, right?
Yeah.
That like someone was doing this IRL in
Well,
real
that's why
time.
Roger did his project like
Right.
this, right? Because he's like, I want
Right.
to start. Actually, now that we're talking about it, funny, yeah, he's right. He's like, I want to document all my
Right.
information, right? I
and
think
we
that's
need
super
those
important.
people
Yeah.
because
Right.
it makes it a lot easier for somebody who doesn't want to spend 4, 6, 8 hours a day trying
Yeah.
to keep up with it. It's like, oh, you have a digestible 5-10 minute thing.
You just don't have the time. I mean, I don't have time, man. I have no time. So getting
now you
that
have a list.
information, yeah, I'm gonna.
But the issue I have with the list is like I have to constantly update it. Like
you have to add more people to it. See, I don't even know how that all works. Like, I think I have like 9,000 followers. I follow like
Benny, your
7,
phone is like a just stimuli overload.
and I have like
you
I
have-
follow like 7,000.
Benny
people,
doesn't
so.
mute half his chats,
No.
so his phone is
I
just
have
Nightmare.
all social media notifications.
I have
muted.
them all muted.
I don't know.
Oh,
I have
man.
to, and
I
I
try
try,
to
but then
pay
I have to
attention.
check everything manually, and then I miss things. And that's kind of a problem. People get, it's fine.
I started using scheduled summary in the iPhone settings. You can
Tell you,
put
this guy knows. Everything.
Wow.
Did
Yeah.
you know that you can make stickers on your iPhone?
I think I did know that.
so scheduled summary is another like productivity thing I do on my phone. And at 10 a.m., 4 p.m., and 10 p.m., it bulk sends me all the notifications from that time. So like the one I get at 10 a.m. is everything from 10:01 p.m. till 10 a.m. and one notification at one time. And you can pick what apps you want in the summary and out of the summary. So
That's really cool.
everything but text messages basically is
Right.
like in the summary because I don't need to see the email when I get it.
Right.
But I
Wait,
can see
this does for all your stuff or just
every
can
app on
choose.
your phone.
what?
But you
What's
can
it called?
choose.
Schedule summary?
It's called scheduled summaries.
My God, this sounds like
So that
give
is
me-
another
give me
thing where it's
agita
like
already.
I know at 4 o'clock I'll get it. I'll see what I missed.
can't do
but
this.
I can from 10 o'clock to 4 o'clock do what I want, whether it's engross myself in a pod, create some art. You know,
I
I
can't
think
do
that's
that.
great. I think like attention is so tough because it's like, I mean, we're just constantly between 500 different platforms, and then like you can't pay attention to what's going on.
I think
So-
if I stop though, like I need to be overloaded all the time or I would die.
That's probably true.
Benny like sleeps in like 2-hour window, like 90-minute
90-minute
windows.
windows.
Well, that's how people used to sleep.
Really?
Yeah, people, you'd have your first sleep and then your second sleep, you'd wake up in the middle of the night
See,
and like
I'm just
eat
so
something.
far ahead of the game, man. So we have to go to sleep, take like a 90-minute nap.
Yeah,
and
I think it was like, there's,
See,
you
this
can
is
look
what
this
I'm
up.
doing, right?
I
I'm
don't
just
know
preparing
exactly.
myself. I'm so far ahead. You want to explain to you why?
Yeah, why?
And I go, okay, let me explain. In my opinion, 10 years from now, there'll be no time zones. Okay? You're going to have like, I'm working with a Chinese company in America, so I'm going to be awake. And there's going to be schools that are going to be open from 8 p.m. to 4 a.m. in the morning. And I think the world is just going to constantly go for 24 hours. So all I'm doing is preparing myself way ahead of everybody else to be basically awake for 22 hours of the day. And therefore, I can't miss anything. See, I'm just playing.
Benny's
I'm
the
playing
type of
chess
person-
while you're playing chess.
That sounds like Burnout Central.
Yes.
No, because our bodies are gonna get used to it. And we're gonna have these
We're
like
gonna
we're gonna have these nanobites that are gonna give us
Nanobites, not
like
the
keep us
nanobites.
going and alive, and we're gonna live to like 300 years old, and we're gonna have super amounts of energy, and I'm gonna be doing like 20,000 different things, and I'm never and like when I fall asleep for 2 hours, it's gonna be like this intense sleep that's gonna feel like I've slept for 10.
So Benny's the type of person, you message him at 10 o'clock, he instantly responds. You message him at midnight, you go to bed. He messages you back at 2 a.m. You wake up to go bathroom, you hit him a message. He messages you back at 4 a.m. and you're like, wait, what did you do all night? And then he's up at 6:30, he's at the school or something. It's like,
Well, my kids, they wake me up very early.
is he still alive? Like, I
I'm
worry
alive.
about him sometimes. Like, I want to.
I'm drinking Red Bulls. I'm totally healthy.
Yeah, totally healthy. You got a big, not even diet Red Bull.
It's totally fine. Now, talking about healthy.
But you have to be healthy. Like, it goes back to the attention, the productivity. Like, I burnt myself out working for fractional while being a full-time DGen. And when the, company closed down, I got time back. And it was the first time I was able to be like, yeah, I'm going to do only meetings on Tuesdays. If you can't meet me on Tuesday, maybe I'll like schedule it, but like Mondays or Wednesdays, I want them to be open. And it's like intentionally giving yourself that time to, for me, it was just create and then research shit. Cause my full-time job now is like investing and trading in this market. So I need to have time where like I listen to a podcast and take notes and like am very intent with what they're saying because I don't understand the tech. I'm trying to do research on it because I'm going to put a bunch of money behind it. And I need to be right more times than I'm wrong or I'm going to need to get another job.
And being mentally healthy is so important. Like I remember like in 2017, like 2018, I should say, really broke me like that. At the end of 2017, like
it's like you lost all your money. It's like you were
well,
rich.
Yeah, like you went, like it was the market just crashed.
It was over.
But it was also like there was for that like like 6-month period, I used to sleep with my phone like this to wait for the alert to know when I should buy or sell things. And I don't do that anymore, thank God. But
I don't do that. Yeah.
But I think there's like this understanding that mental health is so important in the space for all of us, creators, collectors, patrons, whatever you want to call yourself. Like to me, I think like having a good understanding of who you are in a mental health, in a state that is not, I live in chaos, but like I try to live in a mentally healthy chaos place.
Right.
And I think there's something super important for that, especially for artists, because they'll get caught up in it.
You need to, it's a marathon. Like you're talking about, some people don't get discovered till their 40s or 60s. Like,
it's not a sprint, right?
Carry yourself.
Right.
You need to live a long and happy life and hopefully be productive while living it. I want to ask you about your writing process because I'm somebody who maybe I just don't give myself deadlines, but like when I write, it is very random. I can't just sit down and do it. It's normally only for 30 to 60 minutes and then I don't want to do it again. And I'm trying to force myself to write more.
Yeah,
like
same.
whether it is I've had this Substack article. It's like a mini autobiography for like 6 months and it's almost done. It's 90%, but I never gave myself a deadline and I won't finish it.
And I want to add on to that because I think this is a great question. Do you use AI to help you?
I don't. And I don't have I understand. For me, I like writing and that's like I think that's one natural talent. I've always been good at writing. Like I love writing. I'm good at, my dad's an academic. And so for me, if I use, it takes more time if I would use ChatGPT because I have to edit it and the whole thing. It's like, I don't like using it. I have no problem. I understand it can get people a little bit faster. You still have to have an idea, right? Like you can't just like
I
offload
only use
the
it for
idea part.
responses that I don't want to do. Like if it's like an email I don't really want to respond to, or like a DM, I'll go in ChatGPT. But other than that, I see exactly what you mean because it's not your style, it's not your voice. You don't.
Yeah.
You have to rewrite everything it wrote anyway.
Yeah, exactly. But what was the question?
So how is your writing process? Like, do you just write when you feel like it? Do you like sit down and you're like, I'm going to write for 4 hours and see what comes out?
Well, for these essays, which is a long-term project that I have to, one of my New Year's resolutions is actually to set time aside every week to just do it because there is no deadline.
You have to do that.
Right. But like for other stuff, I mean, you know, for the threads, it's usually like I have to get on it really fast because it's a part of some like alpha or meta that's happening right now. So if I do it tomorrow, it's not going to be relevant.
Yeah.
And then usually what happens then is like I'll have an idea and I'll be like, oh, I want to compare these things. This is when I write, and then I bang it out because I like can't focus on anything else, and I get so excited about
draft it in Word?
I draft it in notes because I'm usually I can do it on my phone, and then I'll put it into tweets, and then I'll save that draft every like new post.
I've lost so many Twitter threads just trying to write a thread in the Twitter UI.
No, you can't do it.
There is no more frustrating experience.
It's awful. It's horrible.
Like
and that's happened to me.
Wait, you guys write your threads on notes and then you put it on Twitter?
Yeah. You should always draft your threads, not on Twitter.
Yes. Because but then also what happens is like I'll usually like save the draft like every few minutes, and then Twitter gets so confused and annoyed at me that when I do post all, then like only half of them will post. Like that's actually what happened when I wrote.
Messes up the format.
It messes up it's horrible. That's actually what happened for what I wrote for Roger's thing. I was like, oh, ready to go. And I was like, oh, it's like, and I had to get it done because they were going live with the sale. And like it needs to happen like right now. Otherwise it's not going to be relevant. And then half of them didn't post. And he'd already replied and been like, this is an amazing thread, reposted. I was like, it's not done. It's not done. And I had to do it again.
I didn't know that like when you make, I don't really know how to use any of this stuff, but sometimes like I'll write a tweet and then I'll start getting like a lot of likes and comments. And I would always, and then sometimes I would read it like, oh, I want to change that word. And, you know, people would be like, yo, if you change that, then you have to start over with the likes and this and that. Like, and I'm like, I don't even know what you're talking about. I don't even know how that works, but it gets like it gets caught up and there's like a whole algorithm that you lose.
You should try really hard not to edit.
I know.
It seems like.
It sends it as a new tweet as if it was like brand new, but it has the edited.
But the threads are even worse because you probably like messed up tweets 17 through 19 out of a 30 tweet thread, and you can't just like add them in.
Right.
If you add it at the end, people don't read it.
So many words. I just write it all in one tweet.
And well, I know. That's what you do.
But also I don't really care if people
the long threads, I think, do. The long tweets, I think now do better than long threads, or at least mine do.
Interesting.
Because you can now, when you put a picture in, drag it in the draft to like a page break.
Right.
And if you split up, like say you're going to do a 10 tweet thread, but you do it in one long tweet, and then you just have a couple like of the pictures you would have had in the 10 tweet thread, breaking up the text, like those engagement wise seem to do better.
Oh, interesting. Well, that's very helpful to know.
Tough because the algorithm's always changing.
Right.
So like I'm never sure what to do. And then sometimes I'm also like, well, was the topic just better than the thread I did? Because a lot of the threads I do now are more like, oh, this is 12 pieces of art for the podcast that we made, and here's an explanation of each. Whereas like the long thread is maybe like, you know, here's a quick, here's some things I learned last cycle to do better this cycle. So I don't know if it's like content, but I've had way better luck with like the long thread or the long post
versus the thread.
The thread. So
that's
something to think about, like, because you don't know, but like the algorithm just fucks the engagement. Like we were talking to Tony about it yesterday. He writes all these beautiful threads. It's like, Tony, I don't think I've ever seen one, and I've been following you. I'm like,
Tony has like amazing stuff to say. You know,
it's important that stuff gets out there because a lot of the shit that goes viral is like,
I don't know how any of that works. Like, I still don't understand what engagement is, or even how to look up my stuff.
We have that's the arena. And there's rules, and it's like
Brian's really good at that. He's always trying to explain it to me. Yeah, he's like, no, you got to do this to get more engagement. I was like, I don't understand
really
what engagement is.
His threads for his drops, like his recent Christie's one, I think had a really good thread where he took every piece that he was alluding to.
Yeah, he's like really good at that type of stuff, and he seems to get a lot of likes and views that he says, but like I don't want to spend my time trying to worry about that stuff. So.
But it's important because if we want our stuff to get out there, it's like
I think for a lot of other people like Aniko and Tony, like I think that stuff needs to be more important than than someone's balls on fire, right? So I think that I mean, it's unfortunate because Twitter seems to be the place for us all to go to.
Right.
But if there was another place that like, some kind of media outlet or something or some kind of like,
it's on Instagram.
Yeah.
I like Instagram a lot more though for the art.
Yeah.
Like I never really used Instagram until the Web3 space. And then talking
Really? That's so interesting.
Yeah.
I didn't really use Twitter until Web3.
I didn't have anything to like post cat pictures.
Right.
Like if you look at my Instagram I made in high school, it's just like pictures of my siblings, pictures of our cats and dogs and like food.
Yeah.
And it was like at some point in college, I just stopped maintaining it. The story aspect, you kind of went to Snapchat for it.
Yeah.
And then eventually Twitter had it. I actually really liked I wish Twitter would bring that back because I would use that a lot. But anyway, I didn't use Instagram until the art, and I was like, well, I got to research artists. Like, where's the best place to go? And it's like, it's Instagram.
Yeah.
And you can see the whole stylistic evolution. The first thing I would do is scroll all the way down.
Right.
to their very first piece.
Yeah.
And then work my way up from the bottom to the top.
Yeah.
Shlome's when he did the toilet, right? Remember the smashing the toilet?
It blew
thing?
up the toilet.
Yeah. No, he blew up the car.
Blew up the
Smashed
Lambo.
the toilet. So when I was working with him on the toilet project, I remember he said to me, he's like, "Oh, I'm gonna put a whole Instagram thing out," and I said, "Why? Do it on Twitter." He's like, "No, there's really cool stuff." And he did this thing on Instagram where it was like, you look at your page, and he made like an art piece out of like all the squares,
Right.
And I was like, "Yo, this is amazing."
Yeah.
He's
Did you
like,
see
"How
the
old are
grid?
you?" I was like,
Yeah.
"I don't
Did you
know,"
see
but that
what
was
he
amazing.
recently did this week? He put like 4 locations.
4 locations.
So
yeah.
someone physically drove to one of the locations and like it you weren't supposed to go there.
Yeah.
Like it was supposed to be like, oh, you use these 4 locations to solve it.
Yeah.
And then he felt bad because he's like, someone just drove like.
He's giving out like these tokens. I think I'm feeling resurgence for him coming. Actually,
I feel like he's underappreciated in the space.
Yeah, I think that I think his 2 projects were. I think the toilet and the Lambo were awesome. I mean, I'm also a big fan of his, but I think that he conceptually is a great
like
artist.
fully A-non performance.
He knows what he's doing, and I think he's. I think give him time. He's also happens to be not doxing him, but he's super young. Like he's. I think his art is evolving, and he has a great brain for it. So I'm pretty excited for what he's going to create now.
So we are a little over the 2-hour mark. We're gonna get
that was quick, right?
food
Yeah.
shortly.
Yeah.
We should wrap up, not with the question yet. I still think we can ask a couple more.
Yeah.
I just wanted to throw that out there.
No, so I mean,
I wanted to talk maybe a little bit more about the AOTM artists in residency.
yeah, I was gonna
because I thought that was
I think let's where do you guys see that you guys want to go with this? Now remember this is
you got
2
3 artists.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's gonna be 3 artists quarterly. That's the idea.
Yeah.
And it's gonna be like the structure is like one hour per week of like I'm calling it open hours.
Okay.
It's basically office hours, but open hours sounds cooler.
Yeah.
And it's gonna be like you come to. I mean, again, this is all in process right now. We'll have like access to like me and then probably Casey from AOTM as well.
Nice.
So we can have maybe topics.
But Casey's gonna give him advice on art, not how to drink margaritas, right?
Both.
No,
A little bit of both?
He'll be about picantes and I'll be about martinis. Okay. Yeah. No, but the idea is to, we'll I think the first one will be like just kind of intro. Each of theirs will intro themselves. The second week, I think I'm probably going to set topics, but I want them to come with questions. So career development, art, but also I want to bring in like an expert probably every other week, or not an expert, excuse me, but somebody else who isn't just AOTM. So like I'm thinking of different curators, different platforms, different collectors, and just kind of riff with the artists and like, so I mean, I'd love to have any of you come and join us for an hour sometime.
We like to talk.
Can we do it together, B&Ds?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, let's do it.
Right.
Open hours.
We could have him on a podcast.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, we'll come meet them. Let's think about it. Let's think about this. But then we also do 3 studio visits. So 1 studio visit each month. And with that, because like I'm very used to studio visits and what that means, but for digital artists, it's very different, right? So I'll probably have me. I've had Vince has agreed to do this as well. And so we can just sort of, I want them to share their screen, like talk through what their process is. What are they thinking about? What is their, like, what are they looking at, right?
You have some amazing people with, in my opinion, brilliant Vince and Casey, you, Giga is so underappreciated in this community of his collection and how much he knows.
Absolutely.
And also just like such a sweet person.
Yeah.
Like,
And then on the like more upside, like Georgia's amazing. Georgia went to Stanford.
Georgia wrote, in my opinion, when Sam for Infinite Ceremony, when we got it, right? I thought her article on that piece was one of the best written articles I've seen in our community in a long time.
Yeah.
She really went deep, like super, super smart. Like that team is just stacked.
Yeah,
big
totally.
Time. Yeah.
And then it sort of culminates in like they'll create work that will be sold via AOTM. So hopefully it gets them, sales and money, but also some more visibility. And then they, in exchange for our time, what we've done, they donate a work to our collection.
Love it.
And then so the idea is to have like a collection of works by artists that, maybe aren't super well known yet. So I'm excited about that, but also just to help kind of build goodwill in the community and help artists in a way that's a little bit more structured than just like, my DMs are open.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited actually to see where it goes. I think that there's a lot we can do going forward, but yeah.
I mean, I love that.
I mean, the curation of the last auctions, I guess it would have been right before you joined. I think it was in October.
Yeah, it's Ephemeral Visions.
Yeah, I picked up a piece from Harry Peck.
Yeah.
Great.
Casey did a great job with that.
Yeah.
So I'm curious. I'm excited to see the 3 artists when you announce them.
Yeah. We'll be announcing them probably in like 2 weeks.
Sick.
Yeah.
And Brian. Yeah. I know you talked about the
museum idea.
Museum, and I know you're thinking about some education things, but even though you call yourself low key, you're definitely not a low key collector. So and patron. So what's your next moves?
So I've personally been focused a lot on the lending side. I think that in the traditional art world, it's a huge market. The biggest players are the biggest banks, Bank of America, all these large players. The whole market's probably estimated $20-30 billion. And right now it's within our market, it's like very small. It's probably like $20 million right now. Maybe including punks, it's probably like a little bit higher. But around like $20-25 million, less $10 million if you don't include squiggles also, like all that stuff. Like,
if you take out the
like
top
take
couple,
3 collections.
It's like very small.
And you've been doing this for a while now.
Yeah,
you've been giving loans.
Yeah, so I think that like over time, as the market matures, I think that all of these different aspects will grow with it, including lending. So I've been looking into that a lot, potentially looking to start an entity just focused on that. Low Key does a little bit of lending on top of collecting. But
have you actually, not to cut you off, have you got any pieces in the Low Key collection from someone defaulting on a loan?
Yes, so we actually
don't have to name names.
We got a TJO piece.
Nice.
That we were working with TJO about also doing a gallery in May, but we were talking, I was just like, he really wanted the piece. So we ended up trading. Loki ended up taking a Monument Game edition plus a couple ETH to give him his 1/1 back.
That's awesome.
But yeah,
so you're able to steward it back to him, and that's like a rare opportunity for an artist probably to be able to get
his last project was awesome.
His super rare drop.
He's amazing.
Was insane. Like he really talk about artists leveling up. Like he put out the video series.
So good.
And that was completely unexpected.
And I know the stuff he's working into in May. I mean, like he was telling me a little bit, like just another artist who, man, just like all I want to do is like hone in on their craft.
Yeah.
But go back to the lending. So you're focusing on the lending.
Yeah. So focus on the lending. We've gotten, a couple times people have in theory defaulted, but I know they didn't mean to default. So we charge like a late fee, work with them.
But that's big for a collector because a lot of times I don't want to put up collateral that is meaningful. Like if I have a 1/1 that I really like that's valuable, the idea that I could fuck up and then it's just automatically liquidated. So it is nice that you're able to like work with the person.
Yeah. I also I'm not trying I'm not trying to just screw someone over because like a time difference and they were 12 minutes late.
Right.
And like because the blockchain is literally to the second. So like if you're a minute late, then anyone can just claim not anyone. The lender can claim the piece on default. But I'm thinking more in the long run. I'm not trying to like mess anyone over. And
For sure.
I was open about it. Like
you just reminded me I have to like pay my loan on something.
I was open about it. I'm like, if you're late in the future, like I'm gonna take the piece, charge a late fee, and then I'll give it back to you. And that's what we did. But yeah, I'm very bullish on the lending side. I'm looking into starting something more official there, just solely focus on lending. And then low key, recently we've been recalling our loans just because we want to start deploying more capital. We picked up a skull again.
That's a good opportunity.
Yeah,
felt comfy.
We sold. I think it was in ETH terms the highest sale, the skull at like 90, and then we were able to pick one up like much cheaper. So it worked out. And in the process, we were lending that ETH, earning interest on it. Like it just worked out very well. And also, we picked up a bunch of Monument Game editions. And we're gonna look to kind of put out some liquidity.
What is the?
I'm sorry because I was hoping you'd say one more thing.
Yeah.
Right. I don't know if you know this. Brian just got married.
Congratulations.
So hoping you would also say that maybe you're working on a child.
Genesis collection.
A real Genesis collection.
Genesis
A
collection.
Genesis man.
I just want to make sure because I know his wife, and I'm sure she'll be like, I can't believe you didn't say that. Like,
God willing, when the time's right.
Yeah, that's few of us are in that position. So
I was at Brian's wedding. It was actually a lot of fun. It was great.
Okay, I gotta ask one more question about the loans.
Yeah.
On a typical loan, what are the terms? Are they normally collectors doing like 3 or 6 months, or is it a year? And then what is the APR generally on like a Art 101?
So we look to we're looking for the higher APY, which is generally on the one-of-one stuff. Like Squiggles and Punks have been lower. They've generally been 9 to 12%. Recently, they've actually, especially if you're borrowing USDC now, because there's high demand, it's been up to like 15, 17%.
Yeah. Well, you can go park USDC in some places and get 10 plus.
And it's also because like if you're using it to trade, like funding for the past couple of months has been like 50-60% annualized. So like you're borrowing 40% lower than what people are spending on exchanges. Granted that fluctuates up and down.
Yes.
But on the art side, we've been trying to target anywhere between 30 to 60% loan to value at like 20 to 30% APY. So that
the higher the LTV, the higher the APY.
That would mean like if a piece is worth 100 ETH, or we think it's worth 100 ETH, then we would give out a loan between 30 and 60 ETH for around 20 to 30% APY.
That makes sense.
I have no idea what Brian's saying, but it sounds really
this
smart.
is important. This is stuff we think about as collectors. Like, half my net worth is probably in NFTs.
Yeah.
Right.
And a lot of those are meaningful NFTs that I don't really want to sell. But if there is time I need liquidity.
Sure.
Or like, maybe there was time 3-6 months ago where you're just like, wow, I think the market's like gonna rip, but I don't want to sell my NFTs. But like back then USDC rates were cheaper and you could just plow that into Bitcoin or ETH, hold it, and then at the time of maturity, sell it for USDC and pay
And there's
back.
nothing wrong with that.
No.
I think that right, like Brian, like that's what's going to mature this market a little bit. Also, is that
we
like
have
part of that
liquidity
process,
without selling.
Correct.
Because if
100%.
not, then we look like we're dumping
Right.
stuff we love,
Right.
and then that's a problem.
It's part of growth.
Yeah. I mean, that's such a differentiator of the space. That's really, really exciting and cool.
It's nice that we have that like backbone of, as a collector, I can not leave my house, not need to verify this thing with whoever. I can just, from my underwear, my computer, click, post it up there and be like, hey,
Do you wear boxers?
No.
Just curious.
Anyway.
I'm trying to picture this in my head what it looks like.
No. I'm not like, I'm never actually, I'm somebody who like always has to have pants on or shorts.
You always have pants on.
Yes, or shorts.
Always. So like you don't walk around naked.
No, not my house.
So you're never naked when you're on. I mean, I asked this last time. So you're never naked when you're on Spaces.
No. Well, the one time, like, I brought my phone in the shower.
Oh, okay. So
like, I'm not showering.
You don't shower with your pants on.
No.
Got it. Okay.
But we were talking about marathon Spaces, and I was like, I would bring my phone into the shower and then just have 2 co-hosts, and then I would stay muted and just like.
And when I'm in the bath,
Take a break.
I don't mute it. Actually, when I asked you that
You're
last
playing
question,
fucking with rubber ducks and splashing. It sounds like kids are in there, and it's just Benny.
what last Spaces when I asked you that question, I was in the bathtub.
But anyway, that's very interesting because as a collector, we are constrained by the capital we have.
Yes.
I'm
Right.
somebody who, like I said, my livelihood comes from investing and trading correctly. And part of that is using the assets I own to acquire more assets.
Yep.
And by lending, we also get to not pay a taxable gain. So if you buy something like a punk or a squiggle and it's cheap and it appreciates a lot and you sell it, you're going to pay 20% of what you sell is a long-term capital gains tax.
And you lose the asset. So like,
and I lose the
Yeah.
asset.
Right. So
Whereas if I can take out a loan for 60%, like if I sold something, I'm only going to really get 80% of what I sell it for. So if I
Right.
can get a 60% loan,
Right.
okay, I'm giving up another 20%, I'm paying some interest, but I also get to keep the asset.
Right.
So it is a very like helpful thing.
Yes,
And we-
I think it's gonna be
absolutely.
good for
we
the
need more
community.
lenders.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Because
think that's great.
without the lenders, it's like you have like loan sharks.
Well,
who are
stay,
like,
stay tuned.
Stay tuned.
Brian and I are working on something.
okay.
Yeah.
So we have a question we ask everybody.
Yeah. So
We'll ask
before that, we're gonna ask a question. Dee's gonna ask you a question. I'm gonna first say thank you to both of you. Like I said before, I think that Dee's and I care very much about the space, the artists, the creators, and for us, patrons is something we want to start really focusing on a lot of. And the two of you are extremely important patrons in this space. So I hope that you continue what you're doing. You know, Aniko, I hope that with the writing and what you're doing with AOTM and Brian, everything you have been doing and will be doing, like with as a collector, but as a patron and helping these artists, you know, it just means a lot to us. And I hope that your voice gets out and people take a look at your stuff because I think it's super important. So thank you guys for coming. With that, I'm going to let
Thanks for
Dee's
having us.
ask the last question, which is always what we ask people on Shipwreck.
Yeah, so imagine you're shipwrecked on an island and you can only bring one album with you. And you have to listen to that album to either motivate yourself to get off the island or just to, you know, become
Accept your fate.
accepted that you're probably going to lay waste on an island.
Probably Astroworld.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's a
Travis
good one.
Scott.
Yeah.
And then you're going to get off the island.
Yeah.
You're not going to
I like that.
sit there and vibe
That's a good
out.
answer. I thought you were going to say Uncle Moishi, but
Oh yeah.
yeah.
I don't know which album in particular, but it would be a Nina Simone album.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes.
I'll go
'cause
with that.
Nina Simone has songs that are extremely hopeful and uplifting and
Maybe
motivating.
the greatest hits album with
Yeah.
all the
Yeah.
best songs.
Two new answers for us, by the way.
Yeah.
I like that.
But also if it's an accept your fate situation, I can just revel in the melancholy
And just, like-
very beautifully.
Yeah.
Yeah,
roll with
yeah.
it.
Still the most interesting answer. I think Sam gave us the most out of left field answer. Sam was like, I would get music I don't like.
Yeah.
And bring it. And then I would learn to like it while I get off the island.
He's such a strange human being.
That one is like one I have
the
to
only
share.
person who would have to
He's
answer.
the only person who ever was like, I'm
That's
gonna bring
great.
music I don't like.
It's like, I want to learn what to like. I'm like, dude, you might die. Like, that's the last thing you
That's
want to do.
crazy.
But you know what? I mean, he's
I like
a
it.
strange human being.
Astroworld I wouldn't be able to sleep if Astroworld
I
was
don't
playing
know.
all
I
the
mean,
time.
yeah,
I like
guess.
that.
It gets me hyped though, and I love
Yeah,
Travis.
so
It's
you'd be
good
like,
lifting.
it's
Yeah.
like, even if
Lifting
you're
out
not
of
going to make it, you're going to be like,
But thank you guys for coming.
Yes, thank you
Absolutely.
guys.
Thanks so much for having us. This was
Thank
so
you guys for
fun.
having us.
Absolutely.